All right, good morning, everybody. Today's the first day of budget hearings, and yes, as Councilmember Harris just said, happy Halloween. Want to make sure we call the meeting to order. I'm here, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Moreno, Councilmember Green, and we have on tap today tax levy ordinances and proposed millage rates, Board of City Trust, Department of Finance, CAO office, agenda for children with the Orleans Parish School Board, and civil service. And I know Ms. Story will be presenting on the first two topics.
Good morning, council members. Thank you, Councilmember Giarrusso. Courtney Story, Director of Administration and Planning for the Chief Administrative Office. I'm going to walk you all through the tax levy ordinance and revenue budget, as well as the Board of City Trust, which I'll present with Eric Smith. So this is all information that we have presented either at the REC last week or the executive budget presentation that CAO Montano gave. But we will talk about what is included in the tax levy ordinance, talk a little bit about the quadrennial reassessment, and then present the 2024 revenue budget. These are the millages that are included in the tax levy ordinance. There are some additional millages that are not included, which is the Orleans Parish School Board and the levy districts. Those are not included in our tax levy ordinance, but these are the millages that are. You can see the 2023 levy and the 2024 rollback amount, and we also included the value of a mill and how that's changed from 2023 to 2024. Talk a little bit about the quadrennial reassessment. This happens every 4 years. The assessor revalues properties, and then we will adjust the millage rates to a revenue neutral point. This is sort of what I was talking about earlier. The millages that are listed on the left are under the taxing authority of the city council. So those are the millages that we include in the tax levy ordinance. The millages on the right are not. Those are set by the school board, the sheriff, and the Southeast Louisiana Flood Protection Authority. We just want to make sure that everybody understands that these are our estimates for the rollback millages. The Louisiana Legislative Auditor will actually calculate what the rollback value should be. We did a similar set of calculations so that we could produce the tax levy ordinance and the 2024 budget timely. These next couple of slides will just give you an overview of the steps that we took to get to those rollback rates. So the first thing that we do is we look at the value of a mill based on the 2023 certified tax rolls. From that, we calculate the expected revenue that we would have received in 2023 from those mills. And then we will do sort of reverse engineer back into what the value of the millages should be based on the new tax assessment for the 2024 value of a mill. So here in step one, you can see that we take the total taxable assessment, divide it by 1,000, and we get our value of 1 mill for 2023. We take that value and we multiply it by the amounts that were levied to get our 2023 expected revenue. Then we are going to do the same thing for 2024 and then back it into our 2024 millage rate so that the value that we levy in 2024 will give us the same revenue that we expected in 2023. Just a summary, the reassessment is a constitutional process. It's conducted by the assessor's office. The council is required to roll back the revenue. If you all wanted to roll forward, that is a possibility as well. There are some additional steps that we would need to take. We presented the budget to you all with a roll forward not anticipated. So our 2024 budget does not include any roll forward millages. And as we presented the REC, this is our 2024 general fund revenue forecast. We are at about 762 million in general fund revenue for 2024. And I'm happy to address any questions.
I guess, Councilmember Green and Moreno before I go. Councilmember Green.
No, because we're on the record and because I finally saw James Gill write something favorable relative to the city council and told the truth. I just want to emphasize this and ask you to confirm, just because assessments are raised does not mean the taxes will be raised. Am I correct?
From the perspective of the city, we are,
City.
yes,
Well, and I'm saying as a necessity, for example, it's not an absolute requirement because there's a rollback
right,
in law.
correct.
The city council has chosen to not roll forward the tax millage, so therefore we will not be imposing a tax increase on the citizens of New Orleans.
Yes,
I just want to confirm that again on the record. Other agencies have an option, and I encourage those, especially those who say that they want to address issues involving housing and the like and the cost of taxes, to go to those agencies and express their concerns. But the city council is on the record as not raising taxes because we are not rolling forward the tax millage.
yes.
That's all. I'm just being a little bit messy, but I thank James Gill for finally writing something that was correct, in my opinion.
All right, I think that was a compliment. Councilmember Moreno?
Thank you. I'm not gonna say anything about James Gill. I'm gonna piggyback though on what Councilmember Green was talking about, which is really on slide 6, which is where we're at right now. And I think, Courtney, if you can just go over the different entities that we do not have any control over and just read those out for whoever may be listening, that would be great. So to Councilmember Green's point, there can be outreach to these particular entities about the will of the people, whether they want to roll forward or not.
Yep, so that would be the Orleans Parish School Board, which had a 2023 levy of 45.31 mils. The Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office, which had a 2023 levy of 2.8 mils. And then SELA, which is the Southeast Louisiana Flood Protection Authority, they have the East Bank and West Bank, so they assess 2 millages for those different systems. The East Bank millage is at 12.28 and the West Bank millage is at 12.26.
And just a couple interesting points about the different entities. So the school board, along with SELA East and West, those all have different board members that are associated with these particular entities. What's interesting about the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office with the Orleans Law Enforcement District is that there's only a member of one. It's only the sheriff that will make the determination herself whether or not she wants to roll forward.
That is my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, to beat this horse to death, first, I think the paper reported that the sheriff has said that she does not plan on rolling forward. So I think we ought to make sure that commitment is stated again publicly. 2, that the city is committed to not rolling its millages forward. 3, by not rolling forward, that saves ratepayers, customers, residents, $35 million per year. And if my math is right, that's $140 million over 4 years. That, and I think the points everybody's trying to make today, we understand we live in an environment where inflation is happening, costs, goods, services, everything has increased. This is the major way that the city can help contribute to everybody by trying to keep their tax bills low. All right, appreciate that. And now, Courtney, we move to City Trust.
Yes.
And I'm going to interrupt you when you get to Sophie Gumbel because we had a meeting on that last night.
Good morning, and I have Eric Smith from our office, who is our Orange Quarter and Special Funds analyst, who is very much in the season of Halloween.
Good morning. Thank
Good
you.
morning.
So we'll start with an overview of the Board of City Trust. Board of City Trust was recommended by the Charter Committee responsible for drafting the 1954 Mayor Council Home Rule Charter. It's established in city ordinance as well. Their main responsibility is to approve donations to the city and then also the disposition of prior donations that still exist. This is just an overview of the membership. We work closely with the mayor's office to try to fill seats as they expire, but you will notice that members whose term has expired are able to continue to serve until a replacement has been nominated and approved. So we work through that fairly regularly. And I will let Eric talk about the most recent meetings. There were 2 meetings in October that the Board of City Trust held.
So this year we ended up calling 2 different meetings for the Board of City Trust. The first was really to discuss the city's proposed disposition of two prior donations that the city had received. The first being the Sophie Gumbel House, which is at 5600 Loyola Avenue. This donation was originally received by the city in 1917 by the family members of Sophie Gumbel to build a home, quote unquote, in the original donation for the housing and care of blind and feeble-minded persons of the white race. Obviously, this is not a donative intent that the city would like to continue to approve. So there's a process that the city has to go through in order to make changes to any sort of trust that we have accepted. The Board of City Trust is really the first step in that process. So what the city did was ask the board to approve that the city basically be able to go back to first the city council to approve a change in this language, and then to a court to get a judicial approval for the change of this trust. The city's intent here, and again, working with the city council specifically, we've been working with council member Giarrusso. What we'd like to see happen with this property is for it to be returned into commerce, either through a lease or a sale, but that, we would guarantee that all proceeds or benefits from that return to commerce still go towards, the essentials of the original donated intent, so that it would go towards healthcare or education of disadvantaged people.
I'm going to spend a minute here because we had a meeting about this last night at Temple Sinai with neighbors. The overwhelming sentiment from that room was not to sell the property because you don't know whose hands it's going to fall into, what could happen to it. And so I think the preferred course is to figure out within the donative intent what should happen. The other big thing to stress, and I realize this is separate from Board of City Trust, but say it out loud, is this will have to come to the council 3 separate times in order to be decided. So it's one, to set what the donative intent ought to be, what the language is, striking that blatantly unconstitutional racist language. Number 2, to reaffirm what the court has done. And then number 3, likely because this is zoned for residential and will more likely be a commercial use, have to go through a zoning process to upzone this to whatever ultimately is decided. So I just kind of want to get that out there because I don't want people to think that the city is cramming anything down people's throats. I know Mr. Smith and others, I think we had 5 different departments there last night. This is going to be a thoughtful, communicative, open process, but I just kind of want to spell out a little bit publicly what the next steps are.
Yeah, and just to that point, we asked for very broad language in this initial Board of City Trusts motion, just to make sure that especially the city council and everyone had as much leeway as possible to ensure that this property gets put into use in the way that the public finds most beneficial.
Thank you. All right, next.
And then the second property that we looked at the 2023 October 3rd meeting was 2021 Daniel Street. This was a donation from what is now the New Orleans Redevelopment Authority in the late 70s for the city. It was essentially intended to be kind of a pocket park. The city used it as such through the 90s, but since then, its specific position, placement and everything else has made it to where it's not very usable as a park. The neighbors and everyone have asked the city to basically find some way to dispose of this property. In discussions with Nora, we've kind of worked down a potential to do a property swap with them. And again, since this was a donated property, it requires initially a Board of City Trust approval, city council, and then a judicial ruling. So in this first motion, we just asked that the city be able to go through the process to begin returning this to Nora and working out what we can do from there.
Okay. Yeah.
And then at the most recent meeting that we had last week was essentially just to go over our underutilized and completely exhausted city trusts and funds. Some of the members of the city council are very familiar with some of these. A few years ago, we had identified one of these funds that was from the 1850s that had sat unused, that we managed to go back and have rededicated to now. It's great. We're using that money to purchase Narcan for the public. It's been a great process. So we have a number of these funds, 24 in specific, that we asked to go before the Board of City Trust. Most of these have been nearly or completely exhausted. So the overall amount of money that we're talking about here, not a lot. A lot of these funds have $0, $230, $15, something like that. What we'd like to do primarily is see that these are exhausted so that we can get them off the city books. One of the issues that we have with a lot of these special funds and donations is that in the city's annual audit, we actually have to spend money and time every year auditing these funds that often have $200 in them. So the board unanimously approved a motion for the city to go ahead and appropriate to exhaust all of these remaining funds and then spend the appropriate legal actions to have these funds either removed or dissolved.
And these will likely be before council a number of times as well as we move through the process in order to get them out of ordinance and do a couple of other things. So we will definitely be back. And I know Councilmember Moreno, we started this, I believe, in 2019. So this has been a long time. Eric has been working on this. He spent countless hours in the library researching, looking at microfiche, pulling newspaper articles. So a lot of work has gone into this, and we're really excited to see, hopefully in the next year and a half, the conclusion of this process. And then this next two slides just provides a summary of all of the funds that fall under the purview of the Board of City Trusts, their fund code, which you can reference on the monthly reports that we provide during Budget Committee from Finance, their balance, and what revenue we estimate that they will receive in 2024.
I mean, the Isaac Delgado Memorial where it says legal opinion needed. Can you tell me a little bit more about that one? Mr.
Yeah,
Smith?
so Isaac Delgado Memorial is kind of an interesting fund. So this one was one of several donations that Isaac Delgado made to the city towards the end of his life. And unfortunately, this one had a really strange initial purpose. So back in the 1950s, when all of the studies were being done for the original or for the new 1954 Mayor Council Series government, their recommendation was actually that this fund go before a judge, that the trust be adjusted, and that the proceeds be donated to what is now Delgado Community College. It's probably the intent that we would like to see happen, but due to state constitutional issues when it comes to trusts and their transfer to other entities and whatnot, we do need to seek a legal opinion on whether or not we can get a judge to basically allow us to change the donative intent and to move those funds specifically to Delgado Community College. There's honestly no purpose in the city continuing to be the trustee for the memorial fund because it is just a fund donation as opposed to the Delgado Albania Fund, which is, if you're aware, the plantation that the city still oversees the leases for.
Thank you. Councilmember Moreno.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about the Delgado Albania revolving fund. And I see here that you're working with Delgado Community College on uses and continuing to monitor. I know that they've been interested in potentially expanding the uses of that fund. What does that look like?
So historically, the way the Delgado Albania Fund, this was a donation of some property about halfway between here and Lafayette that has been a functioning sugarcane farm since its original donation in the late 19th century. Essentially, the city now just subleases out that land to several groups of farmers. We get a percentage of their crop yield at market as their lease payments. And then periodically, Delgado Community College, usually with some sort of capital project, will come to the city and ask for some portion of the fund to be used to go towards one of those capital projects. Most recently, in 2021, with the renovation of the nursing building, they came and asked for several $1 million out of the fund, getting it to where we are now.
And are there any restrictions on what type of capital projects? Because obviously there's a lot left in the balance.
There's honestly no direct restrictions on the use of those funds at all. They just have to be used for Delgado Community College. So it doesn't necessarily have to be for capital projects. They could use these funds for pretty much any purpose that's approved both by, there's two boards here, the Delgado Albania Revolving Fund Trust Board and the Board of City Trusts.
Okay, and the Delgado Albania Board, not the Board of City Trust, but the Delgado Albania Board, are all the seats on that filled so that they can take proper action quickly?
So I inquired about this. My understanding is that it is presently filled for a quorum.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Green.
First, so that there's no misunderstanding, James Gill, if you're watching, I didn't mean that you've written bad things about me. Don't write about my tie, don't write about my call, anything like that. What I mean is that we've gotten a bad rap in the media, and I'm glad that you clarified something.
I heard it's about St. Aug. That's one.
All right, Mr. Gill. The second thing is that I actually have a question regarding the miscellaneous donations. How are those achieved, and why are they, who has responsibility over using those for something for the benefit of the city?
So the miscellaneous donations fund it was created basically to solve a problem that the city was having after Hurricane Katrina. So we were seeing kind of a national outpouring of people wanting to support the city, and we were seeing all of these donations coming in for various purposes. So the council established a miscellaneous donations fund to be able to accept donations intended for a specific department or specific purpose without having to go through any, lots of long processes. This is primarily small donations. The majority of the balance in the miscellaneous donation fund right now is smaller donations that are towards various fire department stations, various specific police stations, and New Orleans Public Library functions. What we have worked on in the past few years is identifying any donations that had, any sort of major age to them, and ensuring that those specific departments were A, still aware of those donations, and B, that they would be appropriated and used. The finance department has the overall authority over monitoring, the miscellaneous donations fund just in general, but primarily it's the individual departments that those donations are intended for.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
That's all for us. Thank you very much.
thank you. All right, sounds great. Okay, next up, Department of Finance.
Thank you.
That's true.
Good morning. Will you please introduce your team?
Well, I think more or less what they enjoy is being able to talk to you directly. This is the time to show what they have done throughout the year. So if you don't mind, I want to just
Absolutely.
go ahead.
Good morning, Romy Samuel, Collective Revenue.
Good morning, Courtney Wilson, Treasurer.
Good morning, Frida Richardson Taylor, Comptroller.
Good morning, Julien Meyer, Chief Procurement Officer.
Good morning, Jesse Evans, Director of the City of New Orleans Employee Retirement System.
Good morning. All right,
So we're
the
going to go
floor
ahead
is
and
yours.
start off, if we can just go ahead and start off with revenue and we'll just go right to it.
Okay, the progress we've made in revenue over the past year. We're in the middle of an implementation of a new sales tax collection system. This system will encompass all of our collections, our licensing, as well as renewals and discovery. What it'll allow us to do is to identify those outliers a lot quicker so that we can pursue those collections of sales tax. We're working on that development. We finalized the definitions and the interdepartmental interfaces, and the testing is scheduled to begin the first quarter of next year. We're also working on customer service, excuse me, improvement. once the system is in, we'll reimagine what revenue looks like. We'll reallocate resources to specific tasks. We'll be able to work on priorities and be able to complete those a lot sooner and a lot quicker. What we've done with the Office of Debt Recovery is finalize, which is a state agency. That is an agency, a collection agency that will pursue finalized debt. We've been able to work with the Office of Debt Recovery in data formatting. We've been able to confirm how they want to receive the data and how often.
The Treasury.
Good morning. So one of the biggest goals that we had last year, or this year rather, was to develop multi-agency educational resources and workshops to expand taxpayers' knowledge and promote transparency. This year, we worked with multiple agencies and departments, one including the Neighborhood Engagement Office, and participating in community office hours, particularly during our peak season. We spent quite a bit of time in making videos and informational pamphlets, which I did want to mention at a previous council meeting. One of the council members mentioned that they could not find a video regarding Act 718. We do have videos regarding Act 718. We have videos regarding also interpreting tax bills. This is all accessible online. We've also had informational meetings with constituents as well. If you're interested in viewing some of the videos and things that we do have available, they are on our website. So that's something that we've worked on heavily this year and would like to continue to work on because we want to be able to educate the public. We also this year updated our IS World billing and receivable system. This allowed for greater functionality. So at one time, I'm not sure if you all are familiar, at one time we had refund applications where that was mailed to constituents for them to complete in order to obtain a refund. Now we've done away with the refund applications and that process is automated. So it allows taxpayers to receive their refunds in a quicker and timely manner. So we intend and want to continue to update that system so that we can automate some of the processes and hopefully reduce some of the call volume and emails that we receive daily. One of the other goals that we had last year, we have a continuous effort in implementation of the citywide iNova cash sharing system. This allows for all city departments to be able to collect revenue using the same system, which is interfaced with our ERP system. We've gone through multiple departments and have worked on them being able to accept payments via online through Chase's Paymentus platform, as well as the ability to pay via QR code. So I'm not sure if anyone remembers when they received their tax bills even, there was a QR code on a tax bill, which allows taxpayers to take a photo of it and it provides access to the website in which you're able to pay online. So not only does Treasury have that functionality, but we're working with other departments so that they have that function as well. We just met with the fire department for them to be able to accept payments in the field using this QR code. So this is something that we'd like to continue to implement even into the next year.
The county.
Good morning. We have had some major progress in 2023 with our 4 goals that we had. The implementation of citywide financial closing procedures, we're about 75% complete with that. We are creating a accounting standard operating procedures manual, and it is in line with GFOA as well as GASB and LLA standards. We completed the fiscal year 2021 and 2022 audit and 2023 within 6 months of each other. And we reduced our findings by 57% from fiscal year 2020. We had 7 audit findings and we reduced that down to 3 for the 2022 audit. We have paid 86% of our general fund invoices thus far this year, which is a 10% increase from 2022 for our vendor payments. And we are also fully implemented the fund accounting feature in our ERP BRAS system, which was a driving force for us to complete our financials and to do the fund accounting statements that we present to the city council on a monthly basis.
Procurement.
Hey, good morning again. This year we've worked on our two goals of assisting our external customer vendor community as well as our internal customer city departments. Regarding our vendor community, a couple of years ago, we started an online supply assistance form to gather requests from vendors who needed help with the BRAS system or opportunities to contract with the city. And so as we added members to our team to help this online platform, we were able to not only assist with a specific issue, but offer the opportunity for them to expand their knowledge on how to use the system. And so we this year have been helping quite a substantial number of vendors compared to past years who have been really interested in knowing how to use the system, to use BRAS and participate in knowing about opportunities. Regarding our city departments, we have a little bit take a slow approach in preparing our training. In 2021, we did a training for our departments that we could have reused and revamped a little, but specific matters, specific issues in the course of the years. This year, I brought up our attention on improving our policy and procedures and forms regarding certain type of purchases, certain type of work. And so this feedback that we've gotten from departments helping us reshape our forms and policies that gonna help better train them for next year.
Retirement.
Good morning again. Out of the last audit, our auditor identified some items in which they felt we need to strengthen. So what we did was we expanded our general ledger system to meet those minimum requirements. We realized we have an aging system, and so when we talk about goals later on, we'll talk about a more long-term view of the system that's going to be planned. But again, we did execute those requests by the auditor, and we didn't meet those minimum requirements. Many pension plans across the country look to attain the certificate of pension reporting and transparency. Our plan was able to attain that, which acknowledges our commitment to furthering the atmosphere that operates openness for both the public and for pension plans across the country. So we're able to attain that for the calendar year 2023. To assist the city in future budgeting, we engaged our actuary to look at what employer contributions will look like over the next 5 years. That analysis included what future contributions rate could look like under various market conditions, where the market should be up, market should be down. What would that projected pension contribution look like for the city going forward? We were able to secure that and actually go over that with the city. Provided a attractive pension plan. I think any pension plan across the country wants to be an attractive element to city government. This pension plan remains to be an attractive element for recruitment, not only of new college graduates and high school graduates, just those in general, but also those seasoned employees. We have a wealth of information about the pension plan on our website. And also the pension plan is also included in all job announcements through the Civil Service Department. With that, I'll turn it over to Romy Sam, who will talk about the 2024 goals for revenue.
Can we just stop for 1 second, just because Councilmember Thomas, you want to wait till the end of the presentation? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. All right, thank you, Ms. Samuel.
Thank you. So as stated earlier, we are in the middle, excuse me, of an implementation. We expect to go live with the new sales tax system by the third quarter of next year. The system will allow us to have a public-facing module, which will help taxpayers to do account maintenance. We don't currently have that now. We offer certainly office hours. We have limited online access. We have 3 online portals where they can pay sales tax, 1 to renew occupational licenses. But the new system will encompass all these things. If there's a change in the business, want to update mailing addresses, taxpayers, there's a chat feature. We will now be able to offer this to customers. As I mentioned earlier, we'll reallocate revenue resources based on the priorities, which is increasing sales tax collections. The system will enable us to identify those outliers, those delinquencies a lot sooner, so we're able to pursue those collections aggressively. And we will launch the efforts with the Office of Debt Recovery. As I mentioned in the goals, we've been able to confirm the data format that is a requirement from their office. but we will kick off moving those stale debts into the Office of Debt Recovery for collection. Treasurer.
So as previously stated, one of our biggest goals is to provide informational resources and workshops to taxpayers to promote knowledge and transparency, as well as improve the customer service experience. We also, one of our biggest goals is to continue in the expansion of the iNova cashiering system rollout. We would like to be able to touch more departments coming next year, which would allow for taking us into the 21st century of how we accept payments citywide.
County.
Our three major goals for 2024 are to complete our fiscal year 2023 audit by June 30th, 2024, and to further reduce our audit findings. Ongoing dedication to 100% of invoices paid within 30 days after submission and receipt by departments within the supplier's portal, and to complete the implementation of our citywide financial closing procedures that will allow the city to be more efficient in producing the ACFA monthly financial statements and the fund balance statements in a timely and proficient manner.
So for next year, we plan on streamlining the processes to support maintenance and repairs of city facilities. We intend on launching a procurement forecasting tool to help our vendor community participating in bidding opportunities, as well as educating a newly certified DBEs on how to find and participate in opportunities.
2024 goals. I mentioned earlier when we talked about progress that we had an aging system and we wanted to we met those minimum requirements. So 2024, we want to initiate a request for information to see what our needs are more long-term. Subsequent to that RFI, we want to issue an RFP. We'll have hopefully be able to secure a pension-specific accounting and member management system. That's going to be a really big goal for us for 2024. We want to continue to attain that certificate of excellence in public pension reporting and transparency. That's going to be an ongoing goal for us every year. And then lastly, we want to expand the actuarial analysis of the plan to include a more detailed long-term view of the plan. Oftentimes, plans are judged on their sustainability based upon the assets they have on hand. What we want to do is want to engage. Can be no stronger than the actual plan sponsor, that being the city. So we want to engage the city as it relates to revenues and those things that come in to, again, gauge the long-term sustainability of the plan. With that, I'll turn over to Norma, who'll talk about personnel and some of the financial numbers.
Pretty much for the current year, we're maintaining our position level. We're adding roughly around 3 or so positions in treasury and also accounting to help us move forward in some of the programs that we're placing. And clearly, we're putting a lot of emphasis in treasury. We have to get a handle on getting the cash when it comes into the city and being able to count it and post it, as well as getting those things recorded in accounting. So those will be our focus on the personnel level. And once revenue begin to implement their current system, then once we do the rework of the manpower and the policies based on what those new systems will do for us, then at that point, we'll determine what the goals will be as far as adding and adjusting people from that point of view. But that's where we are there. As far as the budget itself is similarly, the monies are still the same. The personnel cost is really reflective of the 2.5% employee raise. In addition, we did populate the merit pay for positions. The $100 million reduction, as you know, that was the money that we set aside for the reserve fund. You'll see that within the fund balance in November, placed in those sections along with the rainy day amount. The additional 10.4 million is associated with, we did pay off the COI. So there's no longer that money is needed for the debt service, and that's really the reduction within our budget. So it's pretty much stable in the previous as before. But with that said, I think you've heard with the sales tax system that Romy's talking about, is a lot of emphasis there, primarily because we've updated most of our system. This is one of the remaining ones that we have to update. It is a very complicated system with emphasis on discovery. We did allocate roughly around $1 million to that program from the, I believe it's the fund balance of ARPA, in which we'll use that for the upcoming year. With that being said, that's our presentation. We look forward to your questions.
All right, Councilmember Thomas.
First of all, Mr. White, thank you and your staff. As a district council member, our staff and constituents have to interact very daily. And let me say, with all the people in the finance department that my staff interacts with, they're responsible and very responsive and have always tried to assist. So kudos to the men and women who work for you. I think it was one of the people at the table who mentioned helping vendors and brass. You know, brass kind of started off, people in the industry, I kind of worked on that other side before. And then we seem to have some issues and challenges with it. One of the issues that folk talked about, especially in professional service industry, is that if something's going through the brass process, if it has to be rerouted to a particular part of brass, then they would wait for it to go through the whole process again. Why is that necessary if a particular component of brass has an issue with the contract or with an issue with something? Why would it have to be rerouted or go through the entire brass process again? Or is there some way we could amend that?
To the chair, there is some things that we can amend, but if I can ask, are you referring to construction related project or other?
Other professional services, architect, engineering, and all construction.
Okay, good point. Okay, so if I can divide those two, because with the construction piece, some of those things happen outside of brass.
Okay.
And once it's completed, it's entered into brass. I think we talked about those before, plan changes, which is very complicated. I think we've made some over the recent 30 past days, I think we made some progress in that area, putting a pilot project. I think we can streamline those things. I think we just got to propel it over to other construction folks. And I think we'll see that speed up. As far as the other program is what we saw when the system was built, there were audit findings regarding procurement, how we use funds, how we misuse funds and the like. I think there was a litany of issues I think Frida talked about in her presentation we're able to get rid of. So the system was built around protecting those things.
Right.
For example, if there's a PO, once a PO is created, is allocating that money for those particular purposes. If for some reason, when we get to the end of it, the bill is more than the actual PO, then it doesn't have the authorization to pay it. And so it's got to be rerouted back so it can grab that money again and then go through the approval. There are some things that we can use to quicken it, and we certainly will be evaluating that, because every turn of the process, we should be getting better. So to your point, if there's some way in which we can say, hey, if we set aside $100,000 for this PO, the bill is 130, we can reroute it to put it in the PO. The department have to recognize they have to use that 30,000 for some other place. We can tighten that up. And one of the ideas we brought up was, is there a way we can create a business unit that will help people get through it quicker? Because what we recognize, departments are good at what they do. Sometimes it's not good at the business part of brass. We may need to help them out. So this year you'll see a little bit more in that sort of customer service and department, as Julianne talked about.
That's extremely encouraging, because a lot of times I know folk within the departments are forced to have to follow the letter of the policy, the letter of the law. But the contractor is justified in the increase, and the increase is improved. So to have it go back through the entire process again, people are waiting to get paid, especially a lot of smaller vendors. So that's a help. You mentioned reallocate priorities. Reallocating priorities on the treasury side or the receivable side, but do we have enough priorities on the people who are waiting to be paid or payable side? Do we have enough people there to speed up that process, especially since we're kind of rated and graded with other areas and other municipalities? And whether it's fair or not, we seem to have got a reputation of people being paid slowly or not getting their money timely.
And I appreciate that question. And here's why I appreciate it, because I think it's important to dive into that issue. And I think it's part of that same scenario of the previous question. If it's construction related, some of those activities are just outside the system, the plan changes. And I think we've talked about that in a great deal. If for some reason we can straighten it and get into the system will pay it. It's automatically pays it within the system. I think what Frida spoke to earlier, within brass, once the invoice is submitted, attached to a PO, which makes it legal, received, 86% of our bills are paid within 30 days. Sure, we have to get better. We have to make it 100% if we can, but there are some budget issues that you spoke to earlier. If the PO is less than the invoice, we have to go back. So those may be problems, but those three things are required: a PO, authorization to perform the function, the function is performed, and the department saying, I received those product or the services, because that's what authorized us to pay it, to match with that invoice, and we pay it immediately. So we have to go back and make sure those things are correct. We will improve it. I admit that probably early on, we started with roughly 50%. We've grown to 86. We're heading in the right direction. We have to back our processes to the department, particularly on the construction side, to see how we can get those things into the system quicker.
Have we considered an industry survey, especially for contractors and professional service people? Have you guys surveyed them at all to see where their comments are, especially in related to the process that they're involved in?
We did through the chair. In fact, I met with, if I can say, Hard Rock. I think they approached me and said, hey, here are some of the issues that we're dealing with. I think we teamed up with PDU. We made them a pilot project. We worked with several issues to figure out how we can streamline that. So with that team effort, I think we have a pilot project I think can speed it up, the payment on the construction side. And I think Hard Rock will say positive words regarding it. We just have to push that to other construction entities to solve it. But as far as the professional service, certainly we do that. I think Julian have several meetings, not just with DBE across the board. I meet with folks to figure out how we can improve those programs.
Well, let me say that's extremely encouraging, especially because whether it's myth, the legend, or lore, you know, some of the things they like to use against Orleans Parish, especially our parish, when you talk about contractors who do work, professional services who work in the region. We need to eliminate all of the guest stuff and all of the myths as much as possible, especially in this competitive environment where, you know, folk like to blame New Orleans or at least knock us for just about everything we do. That's encouraging. If
I can add to that, Councilman, I believe the budget chair has asked for a report on bill payments. I think you'll see more of the information that we can dive deeper into it, of some of the misnomers and then also some of the truths that we need to deal with. But I think you'll see it going forward, the reality.
Well, the budget chair and I have had those conversations and I know he's on top of it. If an issue happens within the system a couple years in a row, I know you guys have an internal process to try to deal with it so it doesn't happen again. There's one issue that's happened a couple years in a row, especially with the summer jobs program, with allegedly in terms of the process with kids getting paid. How do we make sure that doesn't happen the third year in a row? And especially since we rely on technology, is there a fallback system for manual checks? You know, where if something happens with the system, those checks could be issued manually, especially to all the kids who participated in the program.
You know, and I appreciate that one too, because I know recently that was an issue and I know we had conversations regarding it. But that's not a system issue. And here's why it's not, because there's no system to handle it.
Okay.
It was purely a manual process. And within that manual process, those things were broken. And then after that, it was added to a system for payment. What we have to do is go back in and say, if we're going to have a youth program, we need to build a system that allow folks to enter those kids into that system so we know about it, that will capture their time, the information. So when it goes to the payroll to make the payment, it's there. And I think we've had conversations about it. We've talked to several cities who do this, and they have those systems. We have to procure them and get past the manual function that we have lived with for so many years. That's been our primary issue. When we talk systems and processes. What we need to do is prepare that across the board so there's no longer, there's no manual process that exists within the city when there's remedies out there that can solve it. So we're looking at, and we'll work with every department to make it happen, but that was a manual component more than the system.
So that issue with 2 years of complications with summer jobs and kids are getting paid, next year we can look forward to that being eliminated or not being a problem.
We're gonna put programs in place to eliminate them, and as we go through them, we will improve them. Will we eradicate them? We're gonna certainly try.
Okay. And thank you. And once again, on behalf of my staff, your staff has just been tremendous in terms of responsiveness and their ability to try to assist. So thank you all very much for that.
They're very capable people. I mean, I'm really impressed with my staff. I know I'm just saying, I say it to them every day. They are hardworking people.
They are.
And to be honest with you, I mean, I'm very confident in what they do.
I appreciate the work because we ask a lot of questions. So, and they're always responding to timely. My questions are really, how do we build mousetraps better? I mean, this is not, I want to be very clear. I'm not trying to assign fault or blame. It's just how we all do things some better. So first is, seems like when we're trying to get contracts routed, there's an internal routing process. And it has to have physical signatures, and going from office to office to office slows things down. I mean, is there not a way that we can have an email thread that does it, or electronic signature? It just, we want to make things move faster for y'all and for the vendor, or even internally. So what we can do to facilitate that happen.
Thank you. Yes, we can. I mean, the system inherently built within it. For example, if a contract come through my desk, I hit approval, it's in the system. There should not be any paperwork that requires it. I think, in fact, I'm comfortable with the fact that we can probably use all of our systems to get rid of all the paperwork, including the budget book we have here now. I mean, we can do everything electronically. I think we're very well set up for it. But there are things that we haven't progressed to. Say, for example, if the PO routes through and there's a change order within the system, there's not a change order feature in it, because that's the unique thing. We do that off the system, a manual. And so you see a lot of those manual signatures that require. And as I spoke to the previous council member question regarding some of the plan changes, a lot of paperwork is outside the system. So we've got to progress to get those. I'll be honest with you, the way the system was built, it was built from the central out.
Right.
And we've got to progress it where we're capturing all those components out there and feel comfortable that we're securing the city's finances when we do it. But yes, we have to get to it. And I do understand your point.
Well, and look, in fairness, I totally understand whether people like it or not. A change order is literally an amendment, and you have to consider it. And it's going to take time a little bit more. But the initial process, when you literally have to collect signatures, it just seems like we can go so much faster. And if you are capable of doing it, I think that'd be something really first quarter we'd love to see, to be able to facilitate. Because look, I think we're all in the same boat. We want vendors to be paid. We want things to move efficiently, and we want to be able to tout for the city how well things are doing because of the work that you all have done.
If through the chair, if we could work together as we build those things, and we all understand how it works, and for some reason some things happen that may be misfortunate or unfortunate, that we know we built it to the best of our capability, and then we just adjust to it, we're fine with it. But the system and the policy we put in place of all the years of procedures that's out there on the law, and we're trying to duplicate it. So we can eradicate some of those that's no longer necessary. I agree with you. We can make this pretty speedy.
And I think, to Councilmember Thomas's point, when the spreadsheet is available, that's to see somebody did submit their invoice on time. City can't pay you unless you submit your bill.
Correct.
So now if there's a problem internally, then we need to solve that too. But
Yes.
it's about having both sides done. I realize it's a little bit more of a law question, but maybe it ties into procurement. Is it just seems to me so many CEAs get tied up. Is there a way to have 4 or 5 CEA forms? And it's just like, if this is an outside agency that we're doing a CEA with on, like, the airport, this is Form 1. If this is one that we're doing with nonprofits, this is Form 2. If this is over X amount of money, it's Form 3. Because it just seems like we do basically the same CEAs, and just trying to expedite that, but that might be more of a law thing than a finance.
I do understand your point. What we can do is we can standardize the form, create boilerplate language that will reduce the amount of time it takes us to negotiate. There are some things inherently in all of them, but we can work with law department and see if we can come up with some standardized way to make it easier, and maybe help them feel comfortable with some of this language rather than starting from the beginning each time.
That'd be perfect. And then the last one you address this somewhat is, look, we want to make sure procurement works as well as possible. We spent a lot of time talking about systems and trying to streamline that, but also if there's people, if there are more people who are necessary in order to make that happen, I think we'd like to know about that now as we build the budget, because we want sales tax collection to be good. We want to make sure the accounting procedures are good. We appreciate the fact that audit findings are being reduced. But if it's a process problem, that's one thing, but if it's a people problem, we need more people, then we want to make sure that finance is right sized to deal with that.
And I understand that as well. I mean, what we're talking about is constraints, right? If there's a bottleneck that exists in some places, slows the process down. We don't have to cure it at that bottleneck process. We can go early in the process to make it easier so it flows through quicker, meaning For example, if we're dealing with some of the old outdated equipment we have, given the fact we got rid of the JOC contract, right? And so what that means that we would have to deliver a service contract so we can do preventive maintenance work, so we're not dealing with failure maintenance work. So if we can deal with that, it reduces the pressure on that constraint a little bit better than we deal with it now. So I think it's a whole litany, not just at that point, at the constraint point, but up and down the entire process. I think we can make it better, but to your point, what we could do is maybe offer like a forum and start going over the different ideas folks have, explain the process so we can join in and making it better. We can probably projectize that to that end. Certainly that's something we can do.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this is really in the weeds, but, and I've spoken to Mr. Meyer about it, is some of the forums names seem very complicated. I guess if you're constantly in it, you always understand, but part of it is how do we just make it easier for both government and the public?
Yeah, at the risk of not getting in trouble, I think is a lawyer thing.
Yeah, I know. Well, you won't get in trouble. We understand how the lawyers slow things down sometimes. All right, Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to you all. Good morning to your team. If we go to slide number 4, because I'll be referencing to part of it. As you'd mentioned, Mr. White, great success rate, I think, once you get everything into BRAS. 86% is actually a really great number. And, you know, the fact that you're pushing for 100%, I think that's fantastic. I think the issue that I mostly hear from vendors is it getting to that point where you have everything into BRAS and you also have the receipt by the departments to check off from the departments. So can you walk me through when, let's say, I guess it's put into BRAS and then it has to have the check off from the department, correct? How long does that usually take? Because I think that would be also an important item, Mr. Chair, to add in the report that you requested. How long does that usually take?
If I can, and then I'll
Sure. She was nodding her head, so I was looking at her.
Look, we work together,
Yeah.
so they're all in the room, and anyone can ask
Right.
a question. I mean, we kind of work that way. Once we create a PO, right? So, and I know you can remember, a lot of work was performed without POs, and so it reversed the process. We received the bill, then we got to do a PO, allocate a budget, then figure out how to pay it. And there's no way to control the budget. There's no way to control the services. There's no way to compete the services, all those activities. So in order to straighten that out, we started with the process. A PO or contract starts first. And then once that's created, in the system, an email is sent to the vendor saying you now have authorization to perform the service. That's an email sent to them. And once they register as a supply portal, in the supply portal, they now have an email set up there, and also their payment is in there as well, where they receive the information saying you are now authorized to perform services for the city. Once that service is rendered, if it's a PO, because there's different types, there's a PO for equipment and there's service. If it's a PO, once the product is received by the department will receive an email once that invoice goes in saying, hey, look, you've got something here you need to approve. And I believe that happens. It used to happen daily. I think folks have gotten pretty frustrated with it, so we made it once a week. Mm-hmm. So the system will remind you, you have something to receive or you have an invoice here. Once they receive it and the invoice is attached to it, it pretty much is paid in the next cycle. And we try to do it within that 30-day period because we feel that 30-day will be adequate, that once the receipt occurs, the invoice is there, that we pay it at that net 30-day program. If a vendor or a department feel that there's a need to pay it quicker, they make a phone call and accounts payable will accommodate them. But it varies depending on some departments. Some departments are better at it than others. And there may be certain complications associated with it, like you have to, for example, amend the PO. If there's a straight line PO check relationship, and there's no complications, pretty quick within that 30-day program.
And you mentioned that some departments are better than others. For those that are not at the level that you'd like them to be, what are you doing to help them to get better?
Well, once we get an invoice and we start to see that we're hitting that timeline, accounts payable will reach out to that department saying, hey, look, what's the problem? If it's a PO problem, they team up with procurement to fix the PO issue. If it's a budget issue, they team up with budget department to fix it. And that's how it worked. But to be honest with you, we have been thinking about that business unit where we need to seek people in those departments who are very familiar with the system, who are familiar with the city processes to remedy them quicker. As I said before, sometimes they assign someone to do that type of work who know nothing about it. And some other folks are assigned individuals that are very expert at it. So we just have to figure out department by department how to support them and maybe assign folks to help them and maybe create a sub-department just for that program.
So just so that, once again, so I understand this, what if there's a vendor error, like vendor X, you know, obviously you all assign a PO and now vendor X has to take certain steps, right? To get into the user portal and all of that. If they miss some steps, are they still able to get paid, or do they have to take all of the steps, or does somebody notify them when maybe they've had some missteps?
If for some reason a vendor goes into the portal and there's a misstep, we have someone in procurement who walk them through it. They go right in the supply portal, analyze what happened.
And they get contacted that it's like, hey, you did this wrong?
Well, if this is in the place, if they have a problem, they contact us. We have a customer service rep to handle that particular problem with them specifically. If they don't know it, that will rest in accounts payable when they try to attach the invoice. Once they attach the invoice and they can't do that, they will research what those problems are and contact the correct entity. If it's a budget issue,
yeah,
procurement, if it's a department issue, they go to those departments. What we're trying to support is vendor department relationship, because we don't know the product you purchased, we don't know the service you rendered. The department would be better able to suit it, and we encourage that sort of relationship. But if it can't get done at that particular point, we intercede.
Yeah, I think you've kind of identified one of the issues that you know the council members hear about all the time. That it's like, I think so often vendors think that they put everything right, and so they're just sitting there waiting to get paid, right? And they're like, oh, I heard it's 30 days, and then it's not 30 days, and then they're still waiting, then they're still waiting, and then they contact the city like, hey, you know, where's my check? And that's when the city's like, well, there's some errors to your submittal. And I think if there was a way to identify issues off the bat and be able to contact the vendor immediately, like, hey, you put this in wrong, like, let's go ahead and hurry up and fix this so you can get paid on time. I think that would alleviate a lot of problems. I mean, I think that right there, I mean, I think you really kind of just identified what many have been talking about. Because look, once everything gets into BRAC, you're getting those checks out immediately. 86% is really good. And I think you're probably going to make it to 100, probably by next year, very close to that. But it's getting everybody in. And so that, like, I mean, so my next question is, what do you all need from the council to get that process a little better or much better, and be able to pre-notify or notify the vendors when there's an issue, instead of them waiting for their check and then calling, noticing there's a problem, and then trying, how do we fix that?
These guys will probably kill me for saying it, right? I don't think we need people right now. Give us a chance to look at it. And the reason why I say that, because in the portal itself, you can see where your PO is. If you're a vendor, you can see where your PO is in the process. You can see where your invoices are. You can see whether someone received it, when you're going to get paid. It's all visible there from a vendor perspective. So one, we need to educate them better, right? We need to put videos like Treasurer done out there to teach them better of how to be more informed. The other one would be is, how do we now recognize those invoices that didn't come through if no one tells us, right? And I believe within the system, we have to go on that side of the house in the supply portal to be able to see it. And that group, I said, those business units seated in those departments will be that customer service person for that department to go into those areas and say, wait a minute, we have a PO. What's happening with this PO if it hasn't been paid within a certain amount of time? Invoices are there, I haven't paid it. So those sort of things. So I'm not saying we don't need anything totally. Let's look at it and come back to you. But I believe that business unit that we need to seek those individuals, departments would help tremendously.
Okay, well, I can tell you that the council definitely stands ready to assist. And I know we've got, you know, the legislative auditor willing to assist with solutions as well. And I know they're working with you all now. And then my final question has to do around construction projects and you've touched on this before many times on change orders and things that happen. Oftentimes there's, federal funding that's associated through FEMA that takes a little bit longer. But, we have some issues where every once in a while, we do have these projects, and sometimes seems more often than not, where final acceptance will be like a year ago and they're still waiting for that final payment. So what can be improved there to shorten that period? And I get it that there's change orders and things like that, but is there a way to move these things along faster?
I would rather defer that to PDU because what we did was carve out the system to give them that piece to deal with construction matters.
Okay.
So they do handle their own POs. They use a system to do it. They do receive their own payments. We've worked with them and then we worked very well together to look at that process flow. And I think they're on board with it. It's just making the construction, the engineers comfortable that they can still control the project itself and then allow vendors to continue and trying to make sure that the actual architectural information is produced correctly. I mean, it's all of those
Yeah.
things.
Well, I'll wait till
we
they come
talked
in.
about, right? And so I would rather they would give an answer,
Okay.
but we work very close together. And as I said before, we did recently put a pilot project in place where we're using their Procore system instead of Brass as the construction management system.
Right.
I think that's proven to be capable. And I think you'll see some tremendous improvement in that area, but we can go further.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, can we move on to supplier diversity, please?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you all. Mr. White, I think that's the fastest we've gotten through finance. I said, I think that's the fastest we've gotten through finance.
Well, if my memory serves correctly, I think there was a promise made to me that I wouldn't be first.
That was
What the
last
hell?
year. That was last year.
Well, we weren't first last. I don't remember a time we weren't.
Yeah. Thank you.
Here, I'll take it.
Good morning. I guess we'll just jump to the, I'm sorry. I'm Lori Bartholomew and I'm the Director of the Office of Supplier Diversity and
Veronica Christmas, Certification Program Manager.
And we're gonna start with the progress on our 2023 department goals. The first goal was to fully implement the Mentor Protege program in collaboration with the purchasing department and Propeller nonprofit small business incubator. We started the DBE boot camp, was implemented and hopefully will result in a pilot class of mentor proteges. So we're still in progress of doing that. As Julian or Mr. Meyer had mentioned in his presentation, we did some procurement training. And the next step is we're going to do some financial wellness training. And then the next step after that is to partner those people that are in the boot camp with mentors. The next one was to fully implement the DBE Advisory Council. We've been researching the structure and rules governing similar advisory councils, talking to other cities who have advisory councils. And so we're in the process of drafting bylaws and recruiting appropriate members for the first DBE Advisory Council. I've talked to some members of the DBE community and sourced out some interest in people sitting on the advisory council. The next one was sponsoring a financial literacy initiative for DBEs. Like I mentioned in the DBE boot camp, one of the components of the DBE boot camp is to have a financial wellness training for the participants in the boot camp. These are newly certified DBEs who have been certified either last year or this year, and then we're going to continue to do this on an ongoing basis. Fostering stronger alliances with established technical assistance providers. As you know, we have resource limited capabilities in our office, but we're charged with providing capacity building for DBEs. So we've partnered with a number of technical assistant providers, nonprofits in the area to provide those services. For our 2024 goals, we want to improve data collection and communication, a DBE scorecard. As we discussed previously, we were charged with creating a DBE scorecard with the Office of Performance and Accountability, and also doing a DBE scorecard. But anyway, so we want to improve the data collection on that because that has been a challenge, and also better communicating the DBE scorecard internally with other departments and also externally to the public. We want to implement the DBE set aside program. We have been in discussion with consulting firm who is actually doing work already with the city, and we believe that we can actually leverage some of the experience they have in the system to actually do a DBE set aside program. And we want to implement results-based tracking for DBE boot camp. So because we have this boot camp and we hope that it's going to improve the capacity of the DBEs that are newly certified, we want to make sure that we're actually obtaining those results. And create and implement communication tools for SLDB certification and DBE compliance. We have our website. We go to different events, community events, and try to push certification and talk about the DBE program, but we want to improve how we do that. Personnel. So in the 2024 budget, we're actually trying to add 3 additional persons in our full-time positions in our office. 2 of those people will be help with the program and policy management, and then an office support person.
Within the proposed budget, you'll see the roughly $300,000 that is going to deal with the 2.5% raise merit pay, as well as the additional 3 people that's there. And then the other operating component to dive into, if we look at it, the set aside program and some of the professional service need to set those programs up. And the total is roughly around $550,000 or so for the department. And then clearly the focus would be those 2 issues, the DBE scorecard program and the set aside program that we're looking at, moving at it pretty aggressively. That's pretty much it. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yeah, just for clarity of language, you mentioned the word set aside.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. I need more clarity. I believe and maybe you can explain it.
Okay, so
and foundation for it, it sets
Yes.
the Crochman and Richmond decision. Set aside is supposed to be illegal.
well, actually, it's a DBE set aside, and if you
Okay,
are
okay, well, explain that.
you're familiar that the DBE program is a race and gender neutral program. So this set aside
Supposed to be.
legislation is for DBEs. So it's a race and gender neutral set aside. And this was approved by the state legislature, and then which required council to actually amend the ordinance, and then now it's on our department and others in the city to actually implement a program. So it is a DBE set aside program.
So what is the mission of your office? Ultimately, what's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish?
We wanted to make sure that socially and economically disadvantaged individuals and businesses have an opportunity to contract with the city.
Okay, so that whatever is considered socially.
And economically
economically
disadvantaged, which are DBEs.
Okay, so then what is the DBE? Period.
A DBE is a disadvantaged business enterprise.
Based on who and how do you quantify?
So we actually have a certification program, which is called the state and local DBE program, but it is mirrored after the federal program. There's a federal DBE program, usually through the Department of Transportation.
Mhm.
And so that definition is from federal legislation.
Okay. Just a few comments here because this is critical given the national data, even our data center, especially in the city that's 60% African American, the poverty statistics, whether you look at the reports. And as we've tracked wealth and opportunity, if you look at the income gap versus a disparity study in all the studies, the African American community has actually lost ground in terms of per capita wealth. The income gap is several thousand dollars more than it was. Black boys and girls are poor post Katrina, and African American families have been surpassed in per capita household income by Hispanic and Asian families. So when you're looking at your mission for this program, how critical is information like that when you're talking about creating opportunity and closing the gap for disparity?
So like I said, our program is race and gender neutral. We have to operate within the laws of the state. But we do look at those numbers, we look at those statistics, and we try to focus our resources, our limited resources, on helping the businesses that need it the most. If those businesses are African-American businesses in our community, then that's where we're focusing our resources.
Okay,
If I can add to that, I think to your point, yes, we recognize, and I think as we begin to build those consultants in, we'll be able to reach out to those folks and grow it. Because what we found over the years, we do try to give the normal DBE program with this new set-aside program, the reach have to be different. They are going to be primes. It is probably one of the better programs, I think, that the city or state have initiated to allow us to attack those things that you're referring to. So when we put those programs in place in conjunction with your all's office, I think we have to be as broad as possible, but stay within the framework of the federal government to now begin to reduce those factors that you and I see daily.
Yeah, but you mentioned the word that I was hoping to hear, and that is, how do you grow it? Because there are several categories, especially where there are deficiencies in the community to be able to participate because we don't have expertise or business in that category. So what I was hoping to hear was that the effort is to grow opportunity in certain sectors so we can be more representative in those opportunities. One other thing, I'm familiar with the what Dr. Peter Dangerfield did with Harris and the open access programs a few decades ago.
None.
There were categories there that represented every community, and white women, African Americans, and other ethnic groups. In a list that I got in terms of participants with DBE, much of the area was actually dominated by white women who qualified as DBEs, even if though they had relationships or had business relationship with their husbands or their partners in prime businesses. Is there a way we could set up a special category the way the open access program did, so we could at least separate success from the overall DBE program, especially given the numbers, whether it's from CBC or from our own data center, that says that community that we all want to help is actually getting poorer now, even though there is a program that we're trying to use to help them. Is there a policy where we could kind of separate and kind of determine success amongst those groups separately?
There is, I think, within our system, BRASS or B2G, we have to figure out where it rests, right? I think those things, maybe stretching some of the specifics of what we have done in the past to broaden it, and what we have reached out to Plant Moran, and they have on their staff folks who have built this within Chicago, who have done these similar programs in other cities. And so what we have to do is open up so we can hear people and figure out where we're not touching. We can build something to reach them, and then now build the systems and then fight through the rest of it. I think it's going to be a change for us, to be honest with you. And I think sometimes we have a fight between trying to serve the desperate need of the constituents that we're talking about versus the operational things that we're trying to get done now. And I think those things have to come together, and it will. And I think we're off to a good start. But to your point, I'll look at if I can reach out to you and getting that data will certainly include that.
Well, the data doesn't lie, so I say it's from our own center. And if the effort is to help the most impoverished part of the community, especially if you look at it the last 3 or 4 years, per capita wealth in the Black community, our most dominant population, has actually gone down. There has to be an effort to use or track this information to target that community to create opportunities, especially because through business and through entrepreneurial opportunities is one of the fastest ways, other than owning property, is one of the fastest ways to impact per capita income. And this, I say, this is from our own local tracking agency when you talk about wealth.
To the chair, it'd be good to see that and I'll look at it. And if I can add this, if that's what we're after, then we should make a strong look at not just applying that to supply diversity, right? Because this has to be in all the procurement activity that we perform. So I think we look at the 25%, DBE set aside, we may need to plug that in some sort of way in procurement. So we're touching all those programs versus the enforcement side of supply diversity. So we have to stretch it out. And so we can get the full breadth of it. And then we have to get the cooperation and support from the outside department who need those services to support it.
And I think we have to find a way through policy where the disparaged groups are not forced to compete against each other, but we can create categories where we can track success in each of those areas. And, you know, I know the law is the law, but I'm just wondering if, like they did with open access, because there were special categories that even had certain groups, agenda groups, and they tracked the success based on those groups separate and apart from their open access or from the DBE program. So if you could do it then, is there the possibility to do it now?
I think it is. I mean, we're just getting started with it, the new program. And as we bring people in and talk about it, I think we can stretch. I think we'll probably push up against some of the legal limits that we have to adjust to. But I think the proof is in the details of it, and we're more than happy to do it. I think we all are aligned in that direction. There's nobody more passionate about trying to help the DBE community than Lori here. We just need that level of passion.
Politically, everybody gives speeches about how much they want to help Black men and women in business. Everybody touts, they'll use one person as an example. Everybody says we want to help this community, but the larger this portion of this community, our own data and our own information that track this say that in the last 7 years specifically, there was a decline in per capita wealth. And post-Katrina, opportunity has been limited, even with money coming in post-Katrina. So how do we have a program that's designed to help a community, and all of the local and national data say that community is not faring better economically? And I just think that has to matter. It doesn't diminish the work you're doing, what you're trying to do, but if there are ways we can set up special categories and special policies to impact that community, because what success would we have if everybody else benefits from DBE, but the community most impacted, the largest part of your community, the numbers continue to go down? I just don't think that's success. Doesn't mean it's not a successful program based on what you do with the law, but in terms of impacting crime, impacting families, impacting housing, impacting that community, which is 60%. It hasn't been successful based on our numbers.
To the chair, that's a great point, and I agree with you. And I think, and you and I have had these conversations before, and I think if we look at it and say we have isolated the remedy to be in a program, I don't know how quickly a program can solve all the issues that you mentioned. The entire city have to adjust to it. And to making sure that we support them in what these new brand of that 25%, it will allow us to reach in places that we were never able to reach before. And so as we build it, we look for all to come in and give us advice on how to make it happen. So we're all aligned to the success of it. We just got to get to work.
And I think, I'm glad you said that, because I think that, and I've talked to other notables and academics and people who look at this around the country. We had an in-depth conversation up in DC during the Congressional Black Caucus on Black wealth and the hit the Black community is taking in terms of generational wealth and participation in the economy. And one of the things some of the experts talked about was that I know we want to reach these goals, but if the study says we're doing 2%, how do we do 4%? And once we 4%, how do we do 8%? And 8%, how do we do 16%? So is there a way to look at it to impact incremental change, knowing that when you look at the goals, we're not really meeting the threshold as it relates to its impact financially on the African-American community?
There is, I think we have to get more ambitious about it, and then recognize that there are barriers that exist that we need to challenge. And we can't challenge them alone. We need help.
And if we can use our law department and people are going to challenge us, then if we're trying to target a community, right, to reduce crime, to increase home ownership, because everybody's got, I mean, politically, everybody wants to tout this. We're for the Black small businesses. We're for making more money. But the reality is they're not. So we say we're for something, but the wealth distribution and access to wealth isn't indicative of the reports of the study. And that's not my reports, that's national institutions, that's local, who track wealth in certain communities and among certain cultures. Lastly, there's some, when, African American prime, when they're prime, how are they rated when you talk about DBE participation in terms of their subs? So if they're the prime, are they subject to the same requirements?
If they're a DBE, you can be a self-performing DBE as long as you perform 60% of the work with your own forces. So they can get 100% of the DBE participation goal if they're a self-performing DBE.
Because there were a couple of incidents that where I think DBEs who functioned as prime with certain agencies, but the contracts were in question because of certain things with their subs or meeting the DBE threshold. Now, they're an African-American male or female business, but their contracts were in question because of certain subcategories where the evaluator said they didn't meet the threshold. So in a couple of cases, they lost their contract.
I think.
Or the contracts were questioned.
I think I understand. I think what you're asking is if they are primed, are they required to have a DBE participating
Yes.
with them when they are a DBE? We have to look at that when it comes to the 25% program. I get your point, but we'll assess it and determine what's the viability of it. If we're offending any policies, if we are, we have to come back to you all and maybe adjust that one policy if they're prime. We also some other things we have to deal with is cash issues, right? We have to deal with liquidity when it comes to DBE and small businesses, and we're prepared to make that happen. So that's why our procurement is here and accounting is sitting here resting as a team to make those things happen. But look forward to us coming back to put that question on the table. If they are prime and they are already a DBE, are we required to add another DBE as a 35% rider on that particular activity?
And lastly, because members of the Congressional Black Caucus and members of National African American Business Organizations have said that closing the gap in economic disparity is a civil rights struggle or fight of our time in the 21st century. Is there a way we can track these numbers quarterly so we don't have to wait for a disparity study or for an independent group, so that maybe quarterly you're saying in these categories, we've met these goals, we haven't met these goals. In these areas is where we need to show some growth, right? Or create more opportunity. Is there a way we could put together a quarterly report that would reflect that?
We can do a quarterly report internally in our program, but on a citywide basis, but in a program, yes, we can do a quarterly report.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Moreno, then Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you. Good morning. And
Good
good morning, Ms. Bartholomew. Thank you for all the work that you've been doing and your responsiveness to a lot of the different policy changes that have been happening and your work with my office in particular. Even when we have folks just needing questions answered, you come and you've met with all of them, and we really appreciate that. Let me go to slide number 3. The Mentor Protege program, that's one of the programs work closely with the collaborative and some other advocates. So tell me about this. I'm excited to hear that there's going to be a pilot class. Tell me, how many people are we talking about? What are your plans for it?
So right now in the initial DBE boot camp, I think we had around 13 to 15 DBEs. They were newly certified DBEs. We actually requested or put it out to them to participate in it. We told them and that gave them an idea of what it was. We started with a procurement fair, and then we did in class, we did 3 sessions. I'm pointing to Julianne right here because he actually did the training. He and his staff did training on the BRAS system and the procurement process itself. And so the next step is going to be us doing a financial wellness. Like I said, we partner with Propeller, and they actually partner with other technical assistance providers who actually have a financial wellness program already established. So they're going to provide financial wellness or financial training to some of these DBEs. And then the next step will be partnering them with some mentors. We have actually been talking to some other DBEs who are interested in being mentors.
And I'm assuming that this crosses a variety of different sectors?
Yes. So we opened it to all people. So we had truckers, people who own trucking businesses, technical IT businesses, some beverage producers.
Yeah, office supplies,
Yeah.
consulting services, all sorts of newly certified DBEs who came to that business session that started at 9 and ended up at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. This started this year where Propeller and the Office of Supply Diversity, working with the National League of Cities on specific project, wanted us to partner on how to improve access to information to DBEs. And we came up with this plan of using the procurement fair, a DBE bootcamp, and incorporate mentor
Great.
protege program
Awesome.
into it
Awesome.
to drive them to connect with departments, understanding that the city does business, and then partnering with a big brother, a big sister who can help them
Right.
navigate through that information. So it was kind of a pilot this year that we're going to see how we can implement it in a more formally fashion next year with the CEA with Propeller.
Awesome.
Yeah, kind of missed a step too.
Yeah.
Julian kind of alluded to, we said meeting with departments. So our next step is actually to have them in a face-to-face with the department that can probably give them a procurement opportunity.
Mhm. And how did you get the word out about this particular boot camp?
Because we actually have a data from our certification database.
Got it. Okay.
And we went through there and saw who was certified in the last year and a half and sent out.
So all your new certified DBEs, you send it out to them.
Mhm.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. Second part of this slide, you have the DBE Advisory Council. Can you tell
Yes.
me about that?
So it's our intent to have a DBE advisory council, basically to have people in the community, DBEs in the community, some who are successful in different areas of business, to come and advise us on the program, to give us some input from DBEs who are actually out there and let us know what the challenges are for them so that we can address those.
When do you think you'll have this council in place?
Hopefully by the first quarter. I think we're probably more positioned now where we know what the community is. We just have to write some bylaws. And like I said, I actually have been talking to different businesses out there and gauging their interest in actually sitting on the advisory council.
The DBE scorecard.
Yes.
First, thank you for your really diligent work on this. I know that it has not been easy, but this has been something that, has been really important to the community to see exactly how every department is doing when it comes to DBE participation.
Mhm.
I appreciate your compliance that you have just submitted for years 2021 and 2022, and now working through 2023. Thank you for coming to the small public gathering that I had, so that you could discuss the challenges with the scorecards that are currently occurring, along with Mr. Harris, who is here as well with the CAO's office. Can you fill in the council as to some of the issues that are occurring with getting like the absolute right numbers for every department, and things that we are working on? And I learned about the B2G. And
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I thought there was just brass, and then y'all brought in B2G, and I'm like, what is this, and kind of, working those two systems into one so that we can better track DBEs. I know that I just spit out a bunch of stuff, but you know what I'm talking about,
Yes,
Ms. Bartholomew.
yes.
You can give the council an update.
So the B2G Now system is actually a diversity management system that we use in supplier diversity. It actually manages our certification program as well as our compliance program. We have a one-way information flow into B2G Now from BRASS, and that's just to make sure that we're actually tracking what we should be tracking. So we track the contracts that supplier diversity is charged with compliance on, and so we get the contract information, and we also get payment information to make sure that DBEs are being paid timely. So the challenges that we have with the scorecard is that we have information in BRASS, and we also have information in B2G Now. B2G Now does not feed information back into BRASS. So I think the conversation we had yesterday with Plant Moran, who is actually doing more work in BRASS, is going to help us to be able to get the information that we need and the data points that we need in BRASS, so that we can use that system to actually get more reliable information for the scorecard. So our challenge was basically marrying the information from the two systems and to get with the information that was required to be in the scorecard. For instance, certain things that we track in B2G Now, we do not track in BRASS or anywhere else.
Right.
Like information about minority business enterprises or women business enterprises, things that were required by the ordinance. So we're trying to work through those challenges and that's where we are right now.
Yeah, and I think, during budget time, I think it's an appropriate time for, and I think the CAO's office will likely touch on this about potential tech enhancements that may be necessary to have the systems talk to each other.
Mhm.
And then my final question has to do with, at the end of 2022, the council allocated an additional $500,000 to the Office of Supplier Diversity. At the time, it was going to be for a disparity study, and then we found, that according to the experts who came and spoke with us, including national experts in this field, about how disparity studies are not necessarily, the best approaches or the best use of money at this time. And so we kind of opened it up for you to be able to utilize that money as to whatever you would need to. Was that money ever utilized? What was
So
the
actually,
latest on that?
we've actually allocated it into the 2024 budget. And like you said, the increases, we had some staff positions that we've added, but also professional services. And also additional training and space that we're gonna need, but professional services is probably the largest portion of what we had, and that's to pay someone who'd come in and look at how we marry those systems between
Right.
BRAS and B2G now. How do we look at data points or gather data and information? And also, how do we do the set aside program? Because that is a huge challenge right now.
And I want to get to your staff in a second, but I don't want to forget about the set aside program. I think the set aside program, don't we have to come up with the rules relatively
Yes,
soon?
so that's what we're gonna probably use the consultant to do initially and then help us in the system. And we talked to the consultants yesterday and there is actually someone on their staff who's actually done this before in Chicago.
Great.
So we're hoping that'll be a good match.
Because I think, let's see, the initial public hearing and the rules and regulations process shall occur no later than January 1, 2024. So we're up against that deadline.
We are very aware.
As you know, my office is ready to assist, and I know they
We are
have
very
been with you
aware.
on that. On your staffing, you still, even with your new staffing positions, you're only going to be at 9 people within your
We
office?
9, but we have 2 FEMA funded positions as well who do compliance, and they are basically charged with monitoring the FEMA contracts.
Okay, is that enough? Is that enough to cover everything that you need to be doing?
We think right now, we will evaluate it again.
Okay.
As I look to Mr. White.
No, again, I think as we build the program and then marry those two systems, to your point, it was a one-way flow, BRAS to B2G.
Right.
Apples to oranges have to make it work kind of thing. As we marry those systems together, some of the laborious work of trying to match those bills to invoices or different contracts will go away. Create space for opportunities for folks to move that work into other areas.
Yeah.
And if at that point that doesn't work, we'll be back here saying, hey, we need some more people.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Morel.
Thank you. First, I want to begin by thanking you for the tremendous work you did with Council Vice President Moreno and the collaborative on the legislation carried by Representative Delisha Boyd through the last legislative session. I think it's important to highlight our wins because we don't get highlighted enough, and the work of the Orleans Parish delegation in getting that bill through the process. To say it is difficult to get anything that promotes minority set-asides through the Louisiana legislature with 2 supermajority Republican houses, that's a yeoman's effort. So I really appreciate your work with them, and I appreciate the efforts that were done by the Council Vice President, Representative Boyd, to get that done. A couple of quick points. So something that's always come up to me as an issue is, does your office track when we waive DBE requirements?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Is that included in your report?
Yes.
Okay, because the number one complaint I get from people in the contracting sphere is that they really feel like we don't do enough to document the necessity for waiving the DB requirement when it comes to certain industry. So if we are going as a city promote that it is absolutely necessary and essential that we have DB participation, yet we have waivers that happen on a semi-regular basis, we have to do a much better job of explaining that those individuals who sought those waivers actually did full faith efforts beyond best effort, because we know what the legal definition of best effort is. Best effort could be interpreted as I called one person or I called 2 people.
and they weren't available. So I think it's important for us to outline internally and to our contractors what our expectation is for best effort, because the state interpretation of best effort is minimal. It's basically, I called this one guy, I looked up in the yellow pages and he wasn't available, so I tried. We have to make sure that we have a best effort standard that we can communicate to our contractors to show that a waiver is an extenuating circumstance and not the norm, because that is demoralizing for them. Another complaint I get often, I think this would be important for you to also document. The complaint I think we all get is the same people get all the DBE work. And I think that if we, in your report, can show the diversity of different new groups that have access and are doing new DB work versus the same companies that have been doing it for years and years and years, the number one complaint we get from people who don't really have confidence in the DBE program is from the outside looking in, they see the same 5-10 companies for the last 20-30 years who do that work consistently getting it. And if we can show that, no, those companies, of course, who have been successful are still involved, but there are new businesses that are new DB participants that are finding success, it would encourage people to have more faith in the program as a whole. The last issue is, really, I appreciate that your office has really inherited a generational problem and that we have a very checkered past when it comes as a city to consistently reaching out to DB contractors. I think that there have been ebbs and flows where it was politically necessary from the public's perspective that a lot of effort was made to have DB participation. The foot was on the gas, and then kind of as the political attention fell away from it, the foot came off the gas. And I think really what the success, in my opinion, of your department will be dictated by is if we create a department that has its foot on the gas constantly and is never satisfied with the previous year. I do appreciate you tracking your goals, you showing where you had movement and showing where things are not quite where you'd like them to be. I think that will help build public confidence also in that you're holding yourself to account on where you want to be. But I think that a number that would help us next year when we're looking at these budgets is saying, here's how many businesses went through our program and found success. And here's how many more new businesses that never participated came into this program, found contractor success, and are now DB participants. Also, I know that we had a very lengthy debate at one point. I want to say it was either early this year or late last year on when different DBs should age out of the program. I think it's something we have to constantly revisit, because you do get to a point where if you're a larger company, if you're competing at the level of a regular prime, despite your circumstance, we don't want you competing with people who are trying to get to that point. And I think the mentorship program has become kind of the bridge to try and address that, to try and connect new DBs with old DBs, to try and still have that tenuous link. But I think a problem that we're going to have is that we don't want to be a victim of our own success when we have very large prime competitive DBs who are competing with new guys who are struggling to get in the market. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councilmember Green.
Thank you all for your presentation and for your work. Very difficult work, especially from a legal standpoint many times, but you all continue to move forward. I'm a little disappointed that I see a great number of city employees, but members of the community who's put a lot of pressure on us to say what's not going right so often with minority contracting, if you will, and not minority, disadvantaged business enterprise contracting, aren't here today. And maybe they're watching, and maybe it was cool and they didn't have a chance to come down. But this is an opportunity to ask the questions that needed to be asked. So I want to encourage those who are interested to recognize that the Office of Supply Diversity is available to have questions answered. If you want to find out what level of participation is going on with disadvantaged business enterprises, that you all are available at all times, that this was an opportunity for the public to be here. but I appreciate the fact that you're here today. People have asked and have asserted that there's not on-site compliance relative to monitoring to make sure that, especially in the area of construction contracting, that the DBE firms are actually doing the work. If you could just comment for the public and let us know what is going on relative to on-site monitoring.
So since the pandemic, we have kind of scaled back, but we do intend to do on-site. I mean, we actually have it in our procedures to do on-site visits. Since the pandemic, we haven't done it as much. We do go out with DPW when they do their on-site visits. We listened to prime contractors, talked about their relationships or what they're expecting from, these are the big infrastructure projects. And we are actually out there for all of those site visits to see what's going on and hear if there are any complaints or concerns about what the DBEs are doing. We have conversation with DBEs if there are things. We invite the DBEs to be there. We can't always be on the site when the DBE is there performing, unless the prime tells us when it's scheduled, they're scheduled to be there.
If I can add this, I think part of the conversation we've had throughout is that supply diversity by itself can't do it all, right? And so with some of the project managers in DPW, if we cascade that and saying they know who's performing those functions, and we will work with them to make sure they can identify to us if those things that you're mentioning exist. So we'll just bring or broaden out the project or the activity more so, not just in supply diversity, but throughout the city. We do work with them. We have it every Thursday meeting we do talk to them about, but we'll bring that up. I've heard that before as well.
Okay. That was kind of a opportunity for me to say that whenever I go to those meetings, there's a representative of supply diversity there. So actually,
Make sure we show up.
yeah, you were being modest in some respects. I was trying to give the public an opportunity to hear, but I'll just say it from specific experience. On those meetings, such as one that's being held tomorrow morning, where there is a chance for all of the departments to come together on street jobs or even construction jobs or something like that, there is an opportunity to meet with and see a representative of supply diversity, because a supply diversity representative has been at all the meetings that I've attended, especially those meetings that are held in the community by Public Works, Roadworks, NOLA, and the like. But the bottom line is that the more that we can do on site and let the public know that it's being done, you know, the more important it is. But you haven't had many complaints lately about contractors not being actually engaged and then
No.
someone being given credit
No.
for it. Right. And that has been a problem maybe in the past more than now. So that was just an opportunity to say I appreciate supply diversity being present when I'm present in the field at some of those meetings where we summarize the various agencies, Sewage and Water Board, the Department of Public Works, the Department of Safety and Permits, Roadwork, NOLA, when they summarize what is going on in those jobs. I appreciate the fact that somebody from supply diversity is there to be able to let everyone know whether or not things are going well. But thank you for your work in general.
Thank you. Councilmember Moreno, I know you want to come back to a related issue.
Not OSD related, but Julian, since you're here before, I forgot to ask you this question earlier, so sorry, you're not off the hook quite yet. I did have different workforce organizations come to me requesting that I ask you what is happening with the rules for the responsible bidder ordinance? Because we passed that like back in 21.
Correct. So the challenge has been in finalizing those rules regarding the complaint process, as to whenever we receive the complaint from a citizen or about a contract in particular, at whatever stage of the process we are. And so I was trying to combine all the other complaint process that existed already with the workforce development and supply diversity, and which hasn't worked the way I wanted. And so had finalized some updates about a month ago, which I was not happy with, again, because I'm trying to make it the best way I can in presenting this to the advocates in order to get their feedback. And so this is on me as there's this delay, obviously. And so I would like to present an updated version in a couple of weeks to them, bring them back again at the table to get their feedback. There are some of the feedback that I've been waiting on them as well to kind of tied it up, but
I'm gonna hold you to a couple of weeks.
sure, no, I understand.
So,
I
a
know,
couple
I know,
weeks.
because I had planned on releasing that information about a month ago or more. And I'm just not satisfied with it, so.
The other thing too is the advocates may be able to help you kind of work through this issue as well, so.
Yes, that's true to a certain extent where they're not on the inside of the process. And
Right.
so what my challenge is as being like, who received that information? How do we put it together to whoever needs to review it? We keep in mind, as I've heard from you many times about the red tapes, about the process, how long it takes, not wanting to delay procurement processes that are already in place. And so, but yeah, I mean, that's my own personal challenge with most of the updates that I do, is that I want to present a perfect picture to get it, the feedback. So yes, I will get back to
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. One comment card, Mr. Kennedy. You want to speak? Morning.
Good morning, happy Halloween to you all. I just really wanted to make comments and continue to thank this council and administration for working with the collaborative. And I just really wanted to touch on some finite points. The reason why we work with the council and administration to pass House Bill 24, now Act 230, that the governor signed, is some of the points that Councilmember Thomas spoke about in the data center research. When we talking about the huge wealth disparities in our community. And we know that just government procurement is not the end all be all to save the city of New Orleans. We know that the city budget is $1.5 billion. And a portion of that is going to be through procurement. The private sector spent about $30 billion according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And so hopefully that we can get this council and just the city overall to really go out to the private sector to be able to give procurement opportunities to minority and women-owned businesses. As a young man growing up in public housing and an extensive amount of poverty, is that folks are not looking for a handout. Folks are really looking for true opportunities to compete. And so I know that the city, I think maybe a year or two ago, they did a good job breaking down contract sizes to about $500,000. And that was great, right? But there wasn't a lot of minority businesses who was competing for that work because a lot of them couldn't even get bonding for $500,000. And it gets back to the point that the data center research show, if folks have a huge disparities in wealth and they don't have the economic means in order to get bonding, how can they really compete for the work? And so it kind of works against itself. So I'm trying to be politically correct. And I'm not always good with that. But I think in order to really have these programs to be successful, the contract size has got to be broken down in the right amount. And they also have to have some type of financial backstop for these businesses to be able to get bonding. Because if not, we'll have great programs, but the programs wouldn't be as success. I think to council members, President Morrell's point is that if we want to come back to be able to see what our successes and what our weak points, I think that that's where we're going to see the weak points. And I'm not a contractor, and I'm not paid to be here. And I just do this because I love this city and I love to see businesses grow because I feel that's the way out of our challenges that we have in this city. People hire people that look like themselves. And if we say this is a minority African-American city, and we have a lot of these small businesses, a lot of Black businesses really only make about $50,000. So they really are employees. They have a business, but they really are employees. And you can't never grow your businesses constantly hitting a ceiling and only making $50,000. And so I just ask this council to be able to still, think about ways of how we can really solve issues about helping small businesses grow. And one of the things that we continue to express, having opportunities with the city is great. And we are appreciative of the Mayor Cantrell administration and the council for working with us. But however, we need true economic opportunities, but we also need the financial backstops in order to be able to help these businesses grow. Because if we have 10,000 small businesses, and if each one of those businesses can at least hire two people, two individuals, that's growing the workforce in this city. This is a small business city, and so we just looking forward to continue working with the council to be able to get true results for our citizens. So thank y'all once again.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. All right, thank you to CFO for the presentations. And then that brings up the CAO. No.
Thank you for your presentation.
You forgot to ask them to have any job.
Yeah, I know. Well,
Yeah.
Wait, who else is coming up? Let me scoot over there.
It can be whatever works.
Got it.
Brandy. What is the word?
Might throw them at. You know the answer right? I'm pretty sure I could hit Shelby.
We have enough.
Sure not.
You don't have to go down. She's
Just doing.
Good afternoon. Would you like us to begin? Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make a quick introduction of the team, and then I will turn each specific department over to the department leader. Uniquely, although CAO, I'm also department head, which oversees various agencies within the CAO's office. I'll operate the slideshow and address any questions anyone may have. We'll begin with the budget office presentation, which will be presented by Brandy. Then we'll dive into ITI, which will be presented by Ron, then innovation by Shelby, and then lastly, HR by Christina. And feel free to interject or ask questions as needed, but I will now turn it over to Brandy DeLarge.
Good morning. We'll start with our overview, looking at our goals from 2023 and the progress we have made thus far on those goals. So one of our goals for 2023 was to produce a community-focused budget and to really involve the community in the aspect and in all aspects of the budget, and to ensure that we submitted the budget, the proposed budget by the dates for the charter. This year, the mayor's community meetings were held in late July and early August, and we had those in all community districts. And the proposed budget was submitted to the city council on October 25th, last Wednesday. The mayor came in and submitted the budget. And we are on target as of now to submit a balanced budget on or before December the 1st, 2023. Another goal was for us to work directly with the city agencies to monitor monthly expenditures and hiring progress. And that has been going very well. The monthly reports are produced and agencies and city departments are contacted when needed as well. Department training internally is conducted at quarterly staff meetings. Specific trainings have taken place with GFOA and with city agencies. One-on-one trainings have taken place throughout the city with the different fiscal staff. Specifically, as we look for 2024, we want to build on some of those goals as we still see some needs in those. As we know that there has been a change to the charter for next year. So one of our goals is to update our operating budget timetable for 2025 to make sure we meet the demands and have the proposed budget submitted on or before October first for next year. Additionally, we've seen some need, especially this year, as we look at the training process at the budget cycle, as we talk to different fiscal and non-fiscal staff in the departments. So what we're going to do, starting with the aim of Q1 of next year, is to have a year-round budget training. So we're building that out now, and that will be offered to city employees who use fiscal functions, and we'll be launching that in Q1. We're going to continue to work with city agencies to monitor monthly expenditures, and we are also working to transition to a new software developer for our budget book for next year as well. Our personnel has only increased by one, and it actually increased over this year. We have one vacancy right now, which is why there's a number difference of one. So we have one position, Councilmember Green, for you to plug for us. We have one budget analyst that we have vacant. So we need that filled. We've been constantly, yes. So we need that position filled right now in our office. We look at our budget dollars. The increase that we have is only going to be seen in personnel, and it's due to the increase that we'll see in January, and then for the merit and longevity that we'll see for some employees who are in our office. Any question?
I have a couple. So obviously the charter amendment has changed. Does it also mean that the mayor doing the budget meetings will move up a little bit as well? Because if you start in August and the budget isn't until November, or is that going to be moved back a little bit to?
The community meetings are going to be moved a bit. So our whole calendar
Right.
will have to be adjusted. Yes.
That's exactly it. And then the other thing is, on slide, I guess, 5, where you have the department goals. One of them is continue working directly with all city agencies to monitor monthly expenditures. I know one of the things we've talked a lot about too is outside agencies and wanting to monitor their monthly expenses as well. The city, I see a little smile creeping across your face. Well, I just think it's important. I mean, we fund nearly $60 million to the sheriff, $10 million to the DA, the various courts that get significant amount of money. And so I would hope that this extends not only to city agencies for what we're trying to do, but also our outside partners as well.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Nope.
And I'm glad you made that comment so we can have the council support to help aid us in that. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I'm looking down the road, not hearing from anybody, but I just think we're not asking anybody to do anything we're unwilling to do. And if we're calling upon departments to do it so we can watch spends and trends and, you know, I think, let me just give an example. It's been cured, but Mr. Montel, you remember our first year with property management had an issue where their overtime was so high. And because you came in mid-year with the administration, it's hard to catch. If you cannot see these things in real time, it's hard to play catch up. And I think if there's an issue, if we're not hiring people, if people need more things to succeed, we need to be able to see that earlier as opposed to all of a sudden at the end of the year, hat in hand. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lodge.
Thank you.
And filling in for CIO Kim LeGroux is the Director of Operations, Ron Nelson, for ITI.
Thank you. Good morning, council members. And as you mentioned, I'm Ron Nelson, Director of Operations for ITI. And we'll start with looking at our progress on our 2023 departmental goals. So let the slides catch up.
Sorry about that.
Very good, thank you. First off, working on delivering our CGIS projects. We have worked with the CEO's innovation team and ITI and helped launch the $30 million ARPA joint Justice Technology Modernization Program project. This includes 11 different projects that are aligned with the 2023 CJIS goals. And this also includes a replacement for the Hexagon RMS system. Increasing digital equity, we have delivered a digital skills instruction to over 500 city employees. We've supported 3 CompuDopt giveaway events, which provided 448 free laptops to New Orleans residents. Over the life of the program, we've supplied over 1,000 laptops to New Orleans residents. We've also are just in the about finishing up with launching the Slow Internet Challenge to help improve broadband service and educate residents on equitable internet access within the city. For stabilizing staffing, we created 5 new civil service IT job classifications to help recruit new technical skill sets. We executed an IT staff augmentation contract to bring in needed consultants. And we've also developed a new recruiting strategy with the CAO's recruitment division. On the next slide, we talk about our cybersecurity roadmap. We've established, working with the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, otherwise known as CISA, which is a federal government program. We have them and ourselves continually monitor our system to look for any vulnerabilities with our cybersecurity protection within our network. And we onboarded 1 new security staff member this year. So on the review and update of continuity operations, we've deployed redundant infrastructure between City Hall and our 2 disaster recovery sites. As you know, after Ida, we moved almost the majority of all of our servers and equipment to Baton Rouge venue. And then there, our redundancy equipment that was in Baton Rouge venue is now moved to venue in Shreveport to give us a much more secure and stable system in times of emergencies, natural disasters, and so forth. We've also worked laser focused on providing redundancies and multiple layers of cybersecurity protection for our system. Next up is finalize in progress and planned infrastructure upgrades. So we concluded our 2023 infrastructure upgrades. This included over 1,000 new devices. These devices include phones, uninterruptible power supplies, and Wi-Fi access points for over 127 facilities within the city. So our 2024 departmental goals, one is to procure and launch a multi-departmental street level asset management system. This would be taken on by our GIS team and enterprise team. We are also going to be evaluating AI assisted cybersecurity platforms, keep us up to date with the latest threats scenarios that we're seeing out there. Finalize public Wi-Fi deployment strategy and complete a proof of concept. Next would be to develop strategy for ITI infrastructure lifecycle and website refresh through alternate funding sources. This would include updating older switches, older equipment that's located in all the different facilities that we have. And finally, to establish an IT governance structure for enterprise technology investments, such as working with CJIS and the Joint Technology Modernization Program. So for personnel, we have an increase in personnel in our budget for 2024. This would include an additional security staff member, a few additional people for our enterprise team, which includes web and front-end developers. And then our budget summary and budget proposal. See, the majority of the variance from 23 to 24 is through additional increased staffing that we have. And the other operating costs are mostly through increased technology and licensing costs. So any questions?
Councilmember Green?
Could you explain to the public so that we can fill these 4 jobs, what the information tech specialist 3's responsibilities are? assuming that the council approves it, you've asked for 4 more. Could you explain to the public what it is so we can get the application process started now amongst those tech specialists who are out there?
Right. One of them is a security specialist. We need to have additional staffing to help us out on the security side. Is Eric here? A lot of the others are through Eric, our director of enterprise. Be staffed through his department.
Good morning. Takes 2 people to replace Kim. We are hiring an additional web content manager as well as a web front-end developer to continue working on NOLA.gov as well as the websites that we're asked to build through the year.
Who should apply?
If you have, for web content managers, we certainly look for people with information management experience, as well as the potentially English degrees. But generally, we also invite people with technology backgrounds with those skills. For the front-end developer, we look for graphic designers that have the ability to code front end, so JavaScript, CSS.
Okay, just doing that for the public because a lot of people are watching.
Yep.
There are 4 universities in District D, and I'm encouraging them before they even consider leaving the city of New Orleans, those young people, to use the experience they've acquired, either sometimes in a practical manner on a job, but also through their education to consider these jobs.
Yep.
And I know that we have some tech specialists potentially out there. That's all. So thank you for sharing that information publicly.
Sure.
And I encourage the public to apply.
Thank you for that opportunity to promote that.
Thank you. Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you. I don't have a question, just a comment. I'm so excited to see in slide 5, the finalizing public Wi-Fi deployment strategy and complete proof of concept. I mean, this is something that we got so close to. I think it was like 2020, 2021, and Ms. LeGroux, touched on this when she came before the council recently, but just kudos to that. It's like I said, a long time coming. And when you're talking about, finalizing this, are we talking about early 24, later 24? What does that look like?
I think finalizing would be later 24. Our first step in early 24 would be to come up with a committee that including council input and from different sources to have a full overview and look at that project.
It's so great in that in 2020 or 2021, when we did this, we had a committee. We actually formed one, which included obviously the administration and members of the council. So I'm happy to connect, and obviously Ms. LeGroux knows this because she was in this committee as well. But to connect you all with Aaron Spears, who leads our utility and regulatory office. And they work very closely in forming this specific group. So just like I said, very excited to see this. This is a great step and could be incredibly beneficial to our city. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
I have a question, which is, and I think this is the right place to ask it. So we're looking at FTEs, and it looks like IT based on the budget book increases. You've mentioned that. It also looks like CAO, the Personnel and Training Office, goes from 14 to 43 employees. I mean, we all want growth, but it's there's some departments where it looks like we're going down or not increasing. So I'm just kind of curious how these got picked out.
Sure. I'll take the stab. I think Madam, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the greatest growth you saw was in the HR department, and that is not growth, that is realignment. That was the consolidation of our HR directors whereas they used to be embedded in the various departments under that org code. Now they are moved into a consolidated. This was an initiative that we submitted, the council's blessed over a couple of years ago, and it's been implemented. So that's why you're seeing that dramatic growth in that HR department. They're not new positions, they're just realigned positions from various other departments, and Ms. Hamilton will be able to better elaborate on that. Okay. So I don't want there to be a sticker shock like all of a sudden that agency grew at all. I'm not even sure if they're even, maybe they're net 2 or 3 positions, but nothing significant as the paper shows. As far as ITI, we have made a significant investment, and I think that you'll see municipalities and governments and private sectors across the country investing within their ITI departments because of the transitions of the way we do systems management, and overall governance related to our various agencies. So it was imperative for us to be agile with ITI. I've even had to adjust some of the remote work policies relative to ITI as compared to other parts of the city, simply because it's a buyer's market. Essentially, they tell us what they need and we have to somehow assimilate to that particulars. And so the investment in the increased wages relative to ITI was vital. And lastly, some of the largest investments the administration and the council has made is into our financial systems, whether that is through our finance department or more specifically through our criminal justice overhaul with our connecting of all our systems. So it's imperative that we resource it appropriately so that we can be successful.
Okay. I mean, look, I think we all know that technology is growing. You want things to be public too. I mean, I think that's the other piece of it is we need it to work internally, but the public doesn't care as much about that as we do, but also being able to push out information publicly, I think is incredibly important as well. So my hope is by this growth in IT, it's also ability to take and push out publicly facing information so the public can see it more clearly.
Yes, sir. And I know Shelby is going to go next on innovation but I'll repunctuate our dashboards to better explain exactly how we're pumping out those hundreds of millions of dollars, both through fund balance and ARPA projects to your exact point, so that the public can see real time exactly where their dollars are going and where we are in the process.
Thank you.
Would you like us to go to the next presentation?
Please.
Okay, then set the stage up for Shelby Flynn with Service and Innovation.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shelby Flynn. I'm the Director of Innovation. I'll jump right into our progress on our 2023 goals. So our goals for 2023, the first one was to facilitate development and execution of public safety recruitment and retention initiatives. Like the final iteration of that full package was passed at the beginning of the year. And since that time, we've been working very closely with finance, HR, civil service to make sure that those payments get rolled out to people as they become eligible, as well as periodically evaluating the impacts of those incentives on our workforce. Our next goal was to acquire and implement an asset management system. We have made significant progress on that front, but we still got a lot more work to do. We ended up splitting it into two different systems, one for fleet, and that contract was just executed, and then one for properties and street level assets. For that, we had to do an asset collection RFP. The asset collection process is complete, and the RFP for the actual management system is supposed to go out this week.
Shelby, can I just ask about that so that, again, the public understands when the city says street level maintenance, is that there's a pothole out, the light is out, that's the type of thing that we're looking to capture?
Exactly, yeah. So it'll include maintenance to those types of assets, streetlights, our streets themselves, but also, our city-owned properties and HVAC systems and things of that nature.
Can I just interject? And I would highly encourage council members or council member staff to check this stuff out. I mean, we'd love to host some sort of demonstration or showcase of this particular management system so you all can see all the bells and whistles that it does. I was recently presented with it in its final form, and I was just blown away on how many things it can do and how beneficial it can be to, I know, your constituents, but to the public at large. When I actually dove a little deeper into what this particular asset collection system does and or will do, and the amount of investment we put into it. So I highly, and we can organize, whether it's even just your staffs being able to see and utilize and benefit from this program.
Yeah, I think we all love to see it, and then sort of back of the envelope when it goes live so we can tell the public about it and help promote it. Thank you.
So the next goal is to implement a document management system to digitize city processes and go paperless. Our contract negotiations have just wrapped up on that. And so we're just going to get that contract executed and begin implementation early next year. Our final goal was to provide various forms of support for ARPA-funded projects. We've launched the ARPA website with project highlights and dashboards for everyone to see how that money is being spent, and also established a ARPA project management team to staff those projects and make sure that we are, setting goals and deliverables and getting everything done before the deadline. Moving on to our 2024 goals, we recently launched a graffiti abatement program, and so in 2024, we'll be looking to scale that up and also work with the Department of Code Enforcement to ensure long-term sustainability of the program. We'll continue our work on enterprise technology upgrades, including asset management and document management. The performance and accountability team will be focusing on creating and maintaining public-facing data dashboards, including the ones that we've already created, like the ARPA website. And also we're working on some for fund balance, our graffiti program, things of that nature. And finally, just giving support to the CAO's office and other city departments and complying with various reporting requirements that are mandated by City Council. We have dedicated a lot of time to coordinating efforts around that this past year, and we want to ensure that we can continue to do that going forward. For personnel, we are going to increase by 1 net FTE, but it's actually 2 vacancies, data analyst vacancies on our performance and accountability team that we'll be looking to fill. And then in terms of the budget, there's no major changes. We're just realigning personnel expenditures with actual expenditures going forward. So.
All right, seeing no comments. Thank you, Ms. Flynn.
Good morning, council members.
1 second, sorry. Okay, Christina Hamilton, thank you.
Good morning, council members. I'm the Assistant CAO of Human Resources. Our department includes employee relations, benefits administration, and personnel and training. Some of our progress to our 2023 department goals includes hosting road trips to wellness clinics at different departments throughout the city of New Orleans and hosting our annual employee health and wellness fair. Through these services, employees have received approximately 503 cardiovascular screenings, 133 biometric screenings, and 537 immunizations. This, of course, helps to reduce healthcare costs and to improve overall employee health, which we know makes more productivity for the departments as a whole. We also partnered with Ed Navigator and Trellis. We also signed an MOU with Western Governors University. Western Governors University, as a partner, the city employees are afforded easy access and enrollment to over 60 degree programs, online scheduling, financial aid, and an opportunity to apply for scholarships. We also consolidated HR, as our CAO said, effective January 1st. This helped us to streamline HR processes for better efficiency. We've been conducting monthly HR meetings in collaboration with civil service and other partnerships. We've conducted HR staff training on ADA, American Disabilities Act, FMLA, Family Medical Leave, ACA, Affordable Care Act compliance to increase the knowledge base and performance of the HR managers to better support the city departments. We also hired a recruiting supervisor and recruiting specialist for the new CAO recruitment and retention team. Thank you so much, City Council, for approving that for us. The team is working on marketing material, attending job fairs, meeting with various stakeholders regarding recruitment opportunities, attending conferences for recruiting opportunities, and meeting with department heads and HR managers to assess recruitment needs. For our 2024 goals, we're going to continue to increase employee wellness, engagement, and productivity by promoting health and wellness activities throughout the year. We will have a one-pass select gym membership available January 1st, in which employees will be able to enroll in different levels of gym memberships across the nation. So the membership will give them access to gyms all across the nation by just one membership payment that they're going to be paying throughout the year. Also, we have changed with the CAO's blessing, thank you very much, from having a 60-day waiting period for certain employees to a 30-day waiting period for all employees for healthcare access. So employees will be able to access healthcare sooner when they are hired. We're also going to continue to improve communication with employees regarding access to educational opportunities, benefits, and financial planning by continuing to partner with Trellis, continuing to partner with Western Governors University, and we're also going to be creating an employee relations webpage to provide exclusive employee relations topics to employees. We're also going to continue to expand HR training and development opportunities by continuing to increase HR knowledge through seminars and trainings. We will continue to encourage the HR managers who are not certified to obtain their certifications in human resources. We will also continue to collaborate with stakeholders to increase retention and recruitment. We're going to continue to work with the local educational institutions. We're going to continue to increase employee recognition, support and performance-based pay, referral pay, retention pay, flexible work arrangements, team building activities, and increase NOLA brand awareness with the use of various social media platforms with the help of our new recruitment and retention team who is here today. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on to our position increases, which Councilmember Drew. So yes, you pointed out that it does seem to be a large increase, but it's not really an increase. It is the consolidation of all of the HR managers from the individual departments into the CAO's department. And we do have our recruitment and retention team, but that is only about 4 employees. And then if you go over to our actual budget, you'll see the variance there from 2023 to 2024. That is for the HR centralization, the 2.5% employee raises, the merit pay, and the increased healthcare cost. All right, that's all I have. Any questions?
That was pretty thorough.
Very
What we asked.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Also, I just want to say thank you to the city for the streamlined presentations this year. I mean, seriously, I think we're getting much better information, much more efficiently and thoroughly. So we appreciate Courtney and everybody else who's worked on this. This is, I think, a huge help for us and for the public. We really appreciate it. Thank you all for your time this morning.
Councilman, it really is. It's the presentation and the way it's been broken down is really, really, I think, one of the best I've seen. We get the numbers, but it's not so intense and so long, that it becomes laborious and boring. Appreciate that, Mr. Matanya.
Thank you all.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we move on to agenda for children. An update on the early childhood millage. I will just say nothing else has an online comment except this. Well, people are interested and this is such an important topic right now. And again, I think we talk so much about helping kids and what we can do to help. This is such a necessary component. So we welcome you here today.
Donna, are you logged in?
No, we're just getting the presentation up, so it'll take a second.
Can't find the presentation.
We sent it to Paul, we sent it to Paul, we sent it to Amy, we sent it to. There you go. All right, thanks, Paul. Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, back to
All right.
action.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thanks for your patience. So thank you again for having us. We were last here, I believe, in April for a quarterly update. And so before we begin, we just wanted to remind everybody that you might recall that the millage began being collected in January, but the program actually didn't begin expanding per the CEA until August. So we're actually a couple of months in, but we've actually been doing quite a bit of work, and we're here to talk to you a little bit about that today. The most important thing that we want to emphasize in our update for you today is that this is a collaborative partnership. This is not simply a administrative effort or initiative that is led by NOLA Public Schools and Agenda for Children, but in fact is almost 100 organizations strong. Every organization here listed is either a direct vendor, recipient of the funding, or has worked with us directly on an initiative, a planning effort that is related to one of the projects that has been directly related to how we have been executing these funds to date. And I think that the most important thing that I think many folks would like to know is that we have in fact expanded public seats for low and moderate income infants and toddlers. The CEA itself said that we would be responsible in year one for increasing publicly funded education for infants and toddlers up to 1,000 students in the first year. And we are delighted to say that not only did we do that, we actually surpassed it in our first year to 1,054. We doubled the participating centers in our first year from 22 to 42. We actually secured the one-to-one state match in the amount of $23 million. With that, it meant that we increased our City Seats program from 400 children, which was last year 200 city seats and 200 state seats, to now serving 1,710 children. With that, this now means that we are the fourth largest municipally funded early education program in the country. That includes most cities that are universal pre-K. We are the only one of those four that focuses exclusively on infants and toddlers. So that is a huge win for the city, and is a direct relationship, a direct response to the people of this city who voted for this millage, but also to the work of our council and our mayor and administration and the people who have done this work every day. We also were able, because of these funds, to directly save 54 seats that were ended by state funding ending over the summer. We were actually able to convert those seats. In the 63 other parishes that had those seats, those funds went away. But we were able to actually backfill them and put them into this program. And because of this, we were able to leverage an additional set of state funding that we had not anticipated. And just this month, we will be adding an additional 470 state seats through something called the State CCAP B2 program, which will actually expand the number of sites to an additional 26 new sites. So if you do the math now, we are now operating publicly funded seats, both state funding and local funding, at over 60 childcare centers across the city. And we are now going to be serving approximately 2,200 children. If we look at that from last year, that's about 170% increase. And it's a pretty significant win. The next slide will give you just an overview of where those seats are located. As we have done since inception, when this program was created in 2018, they have been spread across the city. There is, in fact, an emphasis on those neighborhoods and areas where there has been unmet need. So the West Bank and the New Orleans East continue to be those priority areas because that is where you have the highest concentration of low-income children and the fewest number of available seats. And so we have prioritized them in that distribution. But you'll see there that we now have a complementary suite of seats that are available, that some are state funded, some are city funded. And on top of that, you might recall that the CEA also included a bulk of a tranche of funding that was specific to essentially for comprehensive services and supports. What makes this program unique is that it doesn't just exclusively focus on access to childcare, but it then provides a suite of services around each of the families that are participating in the program, as well as the centers and the teachers. Probably the biggest hallmark of this was a brand new partnership with Children's Hospital. This Children's Hospital partnership directly provides medical services into the childcare centers. This is the first that we've ever heard of this ever happening in the country. This is a state-of-the-art partnership that essentially, and thank you for Councilmember King for coming to the opening of that. But what it really does is it provides medical, social, and emotional supports to children on site. So as you probably can imagine, an ear raid can be highly detrimental when you have a classroom of 4 children or 8 children. And if you don't know what's happening, and if you're especially, have a set of barriers, you may not know how to get that family to a doctor to be able to make sure that gets taken care of. Now we have it's actually a team of 7 people at Children's Hospital who works exclusively with our SETI seat sites and actually provides those services on site. We are also providing professional development and mental health counseling, as we have always done, to our teachers who teach in this program, and also have created a brand new substitute pool. What typically happens is that we are so strapped so thin in our childcare centers that if teachers want to take advantage of professional development or are sick, they cannot leave the classroom. We now have a program that we have just really created with a national partner where we'll be able to buy substitute time for guest educators to actually go in so that if someone calls out, we actually have coverage and they don't have to shut down that classroom for the day, which is what would typically happen. In addition, we have outlined 22 strategies to increase ECE workforce. The early childhood workforce is not immune. Many industries right now are also experiencing workforce challenges. We worked with over 25 community partners to develop those strategies. We've got a brand new www.earlychildhoodjobs.org media campaign that also sits with our K-12 systems job board. So if you are an educator in K-12 or early ed, you go to the same job board now. And we've also been able to, with your support, provide retention bonuses as part of that suite of incentives. In addition, we'll be working with you hopefully on some additional permitting and zoning support for our childcare centers. That has been a big barrier to opening and increasing some of our access. We've actually already helped 10 childcare centers get through our zoning and permitting challenges to date since July, but we've identified some additional barriers. We've also provided through private funding, some additional pilot grants to see how we can incentivize folks to open up some new childcare centers. And we're working with the Power Coalition to actually canvass neighborhoods to understand block by block, what are some of the more unique needs of each individual. And a lot of those priorities are going to be maintained into next year. It's hard to say this, but we are still in planning year. We've only actually been operating the millage for about 4 months. And so the biggest priority that we have is maintaining continuity of care for those children and families. The state match is something that we have to advocate for every single year. And so one of the biggest priorities for us is to ensure that that money continues to come and that every single year we are allocating the seats appropriately to ensure that no child or family loses that continuity of care. We will continue to leverage that state funding and build those really strong community partnerships. As we've already said, we are going to move from planning around facilities to really identifying where those facilities are most needed and help try to enable some community partnerships to ensure that that happens and really start moving in on how do we ensure that we have a strong, robust early childhood workforce. Lastly, and certainly not the least important, we will continue to communicate and transparently about the purpose of this millage and how these funds are being used and continue to improve our systems. I'm going to turn it over. You'll see here, just as a FYI, we do in fact have the budget as outlined in the Cooperative Endeavor Agreement. The line item budget has been approved per the CEA with the Knowing Steering Committee. Both the city and the council have representatives on that steering committee. And then what will typically happen is we wait to hear what happens with the state matching funds, and then we line that up to make sure that those funds still are sufficient.
All right, good morning. Dr. Fulmore here, Deputy Superintendent with NOLA Public Schools. And to continue on with what Jen has shared with you, to meet our goal of enrolling up to 1,000 children beginning this school year, we've done a number of things in collaboration with the Office of Youth and Families and Agenda for Children. To include, most importantly, creating a coordinated enrollment plan. These actions include maximizing our system capacity to accommodate more seats, to create community awareness about the seats that are available and the importance of early childhood education, to coordinate eligibility for our publicly funded seats, and to increase family enrollment support. Increased family awareness for us, it looks like access to early learning opportunities through our early childhood application. We recently transitioned to a new application platform called Avela, where families can apply for all publicly funded seats and submit eligibility documents in one site. We do recognize that many of our families have experienced, challenges with the transition, but we've also put a number of supports in place by working with our providers to better understand what those challenges are so we can make refinements to the application process so that it's more family friendly. We've hired a marketing and web development firm to create our new enrollnolaps.com website with increased early childhood information and family enrollment resources. We've hired 3 additional bilingual early childhood family support specialists and a full-time eligibility compliance monitor. We recognize that we are increasingly seeing multilingual families, and so it was important for us to make sure that we had staff readily available to support and meet those families where they are so that they too can have access to these opportunities. We've also improved our coordinated funding our coordinated funding request application and our process for evaluating. And we've built an early childhood seat availability report so that families are aware of which programs have available seats. Additionally, we've partnered with the city's Family Connect initiative for new parents to increase family access and awareness of free seats for eligible families. Researching solutions, we found a number of things through data simulations to increase equitable family access to seats by targeting improvements to the district. So we know that we've had to work on the match process designed to assign students to schools based on families' ranked choices and what eligibility requirements they meet. Our coordinated funding request evaluation process designed to determine which centers receive publicly funded seats and how many seats they are allocated each year. And we do that in partnership and at the table with Noeen. Upgrading our student information system, Salesforce. We've also been pursuing additional early childhood enrollment and effective family engagement strategies, research opportunities through New Orleans Collaborative for Early Childhood Education Research. We've, in addition, installed family tech stations at our family resource centers to enable families to more easily apply, get verified, and get support on site at the time of their application process. And we've expanded family supports with additional hours and virtual options for enrollment support. So now families can get help via online services. They can schedule appointments and meet with our team online and not have to travel directly to our family resource centers for supports. And lastly is an overview of our budget. The breakdown includes 20% of our budget being allocated for family enrollment and application supports and the verification process that goes along with that. 18% for information and media campaign, 34% for family access center and school provider support and coordinated funding requests, 23% for early childhood data systems and supports, 5% for fiscal, administrative, and program support for a total of $1.5 million for our budget. And that concludes our millage and enrollment update. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas?
Well, really just thank you guys. You know, I'm glad you're sharing this information. I know with WBOK and the Good Morning Show, we get a lot of this information a long time ago. And just, I think this is a partnership that's working. Agenda for Children, Judy Watts, Donna Jonigan, Dr. Rakaz, and what you guys are doing with the school system. I like the fact how you're taking a look at the map and how the demographic has shifted, especially post-Hope 6 with public housing and post-Katrina with the demographic. That's critical information that lines up with the Alice report and some of what the data center has done. So very useful stuff. I hope we can expand it. Those zip codes in Algiers and New Orleans East, you know, are deserts when you talk about nonprofits and especially with services for kids. And I think this gives us an idea of how we can service one end of it, but also the need for the other social service agencies to be in those zip codes or in those communities. So just much appreciation. I'm glad everybody else gets a chance to hear this critical data because it's important. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess say something before I have a couple of questions, which is, I don't think we should understate enough that last year there were 820 kids enrolled, and this year there are going to be over 2,200. I mean, that is a huge, tremendous, spectacular, exponential. I mean, I could keep on using adjectives, but I don't think we can say enough, and I think it speaks to how you need money to get money. And that's what happened here, is that the citizens supported this, and then the state, and then you all found additional funding. I mean, I know a lot of times we like to talk to the press while they're sitting here, but this is a big win for the city of New Orleans. And it's really something I think that needs to be highlighted more. I think to Councilmember Thomas's point too, on slide 5, there's only 3 centers in District A. The needs here are different than other places, but where you see centers are, we also tend to see issues with blight and poverty and lack of health. And so the fact that Children's is putting health facilities into these locations is also something that is incredibly important. I guess I wanted to ask Jen, I mean, I know you always have to be concerned dealing with any legislative body going into a budget year. How do we feel overall about these state funds sort of remaining intact as we look forward to this budget cycle?
I think that this year, we didn't know we were gonna have the funds until the last minute, and I think we should suspect and plan every year as if that is going to be the case. The way that we have allocated those seats this year is that, we are very intentional every year that the number of rising children and the number of infants also equals the number of 2- and 3-year-olds that would potentially need to move up, because we said our number one priority is continuity of care. And so that is a roundabout way of saying, I will plan every year as if those funds will not be available, and I will fight for those funds to be available.
Well, I guess we say this a lot, but whatever I think the council and the city can do to help with that, well, it's just incredibly important. And again, to show this kind of tremendous growth over 1 year period, you don't see that in things that are related to government. And it needs to be not only celebrated, but also shown, I think, from the aspect of efficiency and equity about what people are getting as a result.
I also want to remind everybody that we still have, 8,300 kids in the city that we said, that was that number that we talked a lot about, and we got to 2,200. But we're not quite there yet.
Right.
Right. And so this isn't a huge step in the right direction, but we still are not quite there for all kids. And so I think that for us, we're going to continue to advocate for as much funding as possible to ensure that young people get served.
And then for the school board, obviously you're trying to meet your goal of 1,000 children, but if this trend continues, I'm not saying there'll be 170% growth every single year, but if you go from 1,000 to 2,000, do you feel like you're prepared for that type of growth in the future? I mean, the hard, like we're seeing it, and in fairness, we're seeing it right now with the money that the city has from ARPA and from fund balance. It's hard to grow.
It is very challenging to grow, and not only that, but to meet the changing demands of the requirements of seat capacity growth, which change, at times depending on what the state deems. But in terms of our team, we have an incredible team that works around the clock on this, and we recognize that sometimes that is met, with bumps in the road throughout the process, but we are committed to working through those challenges and working together with our, providers and partners for kids. But we are paying attention, to the demand and the growth needs and how we shift, on our part to meet the needs, because our first priority is that our children have an exceptional early start to school. And so how we adjust to that is for their benefit and not for our comfort.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before. I had both of my kids started at New Orleans Public Schools, and I had one who went to kindergarten, one who's pre-K4, and the pre-K4 just adapted so much more easily at hitting the ground running. And so obviously you want to have that kind of runway possible. Anybody else from the dais? All right. Thank you all. This is wonderful news. Thank you all so much. We look forward to working with you in the future. Last, but certainly not least, civil service.
We have public comments.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. 5 public comments.
We have 5 public comments. All of them are in support and none of them are paid actors. The first one is from Pamela Steeg. I'm a former Agenda for Children board member. For many years, I helped raise funds for the school readiness tax credit. Never have I seen such a broad support across the spectrum of businesses and their owners. This is a win for children and families, a win for employers, and a win for our economy. All children deserve access to a solid education. We have made important progress. We must continue to move forward. We always seem to disregard the teachers when clearly to hire and retain the best for our children, providing a competitive salary is imperative. Please don't stop short. Our children are depending on you. Thank you. The next comment is from Gilda Duplessis. I support the millage. We have been able to expand caring for children at a stage where that most brain development occurs. It is crucial for our city's future that early childhood programs continue to get funding. The third comment is from Hamilton Simmons Jones. This millage has helped create 1,510 new early learning seats in our city to date. It made significant investments in key elements that are required to expand access to high quality early care and education in our city. This includes teacher training, facilities, and quality improvement mechanisms. This kind of expansion in 1 year is unprecedented. This budget request represents important next steps in the expansion of early childhood education in New Orleans. These investments make sense. They are in line with what was proposed when voters showed up last April, and over 61% voted in support of it. Thank you for your continued leadership in helping create a community where every child has access to high quality early care and education, and parents can go to work or school knowing their children are taken care of. The next comment is from Sonia Joseph. This millage has helped create 1,510 new early learning seats in our city to date and made significant investments in key elements that are required to expand access to high quality early care in our city. It has enabled me to hire additional staff and pay them a living wage or higher. And last but not least is from Christy Gibbons. Good afternoon. As a child care provider, I ask that you approve the budget that is being presented. Please support by continuing to allocate funding for teacher bonuses and improving reading scores. It helps improve morale, retention, and student learning. Teachers play a critical role in preparing our students for success. Additionally, investing in improving resource reading scores is vital to ensure they are ready academically. I share your appreciation for the efforts made in early childhood. It has been a positive impact on our children, families, and staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Oh, we go back that one. Thoughts to the middle. Okay.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Amy Trepanier, Director of Civil Service. Today I have with me Robert Hagman and Tia Harrison from the Civil Service staff. And we'll just quickly go over our progress on our 2023 departmental goals and then go with our 2024 departmental goals. Our first goal for 2023 was to continue to work with the City and Civil Service Commission to revise civil service rules and processes to enhance efficiency, transparency, and fairness in the administration of the merit system. So far this year, we've provided support for 4 amendments to the civil service rules, including rules regarding sick leave usage to care for an immediate family member, standardization of the probationary period to 1 year for all classified positions, and the expansion of parental leave benefits. We also have 2 additional rule changes pending before the commission. One is relative to our appeals process. The other one came to us through the council, which is annual leave day for public safety professionals who meet certain physical fitness standards. So those will be before the commission in November. Our second goal was to oversee the development and administration of police and fire promotional exams. This year, we administered 3 assessment center exams for 240 promotional candidates for police sergeant, fire captain, and fire district chief. They were assessment center style tests that included video-based testing, which was scored by outside assessors. We implemented new software to enhance recruitment for vacancies. We utilized a new module in NeoGov called NeoGov Attract. We also accepted online applications, performed online recruitment and routed requisitions that way. So far this year, we've received about 55% more applications than we did over the same period last year. I think that's directly attributable to Councilmember Green, who every time I tune into a council meeting, he's advocating for city government employment. So thank you very much. It's the fruits of your labor. But yeah, we're up in applications. I think the post-COVID labor market's starting to calm down a little bit, so our applications are up. We also oversee employee enrichment courses, and this year we selected 2 additional trainers, which are city employees to serve as trainers in that program. So far this year, through that program, we've administered employee enrichment courses to 542 employees, both in classroom and virtual training sessions. We also this year piloted a new emerging leaders program where we asked the departments to identify a couple of people from their department in management or middle management, and that we provided through a consultant 20 hours of leadership training. And those topics included building effective teams, problem solving, understanding self and others, and leadership and motivation. We thought it was really good to provide our managers with those tools, and we're hopeful to do that again in 2024. Another one of our goals this year was to resume nationwide electronic administration of the police recruit entrance exam. We had a very ill-timed launch of remote testing during the beginning of COVID. So this is sort of our second crack at it. That was put into play May 1st. And now we're also using a new exam in conjunction with that remote testing. Individuals can come to our department and take it for free, or for a small fee, they can take it at home and have it remote proctored, or they can go to one of the national testing centers of their choosing. We're also working on our contract renewal in December, and we're gonna put a provision in there that will allow us to purchase some vouchers to actually waive that fee for some applicants. So far, 97 people have taken the recruit exam remotely through this new process, and almost 400 people have taken this new exam since May, and that's a 57% increase over the same time frame last year. So test takers are up for police recruit exam, but we're very happy with this tool that allows us to access people all throughout the country without traveling to New Orleans to take our test. This year we worked with departments to address vacancies through hiring rate increases and or minimum qualification changes. You guys every month see those come through from our commission. So far we've increased hiring rates for 130 job classifications. Some examples are for firefighters, building inspectors, IT positions, maintenance positions, social workers. And then we also increased the maximum pay for lifeguards to allow for flexibility based on seasonal needs, to put in temporary special pays to get people into that job during the difficult summer seasons to fill those positions.
I'm just going to interrupt here. I want to give a big thank you to y'all for doing the salary studies. I know my office has requested many of them, and I can tell you that we've gotten compliments that really I just want to pass on to you, because these actually help retain people, attract people, to Councilmember Green's point, making sure that our salaries in New Orleans are commensurate with other jurisdictions is critical, and that's something that you all play a huge part in doing. So I just want to give a huge thank you to you, because it's well deserved and due.
Thank you very much. We also this year have worked, I think Shelby Flynn noted that earlier, we're overseeing the implementation of the service-wide pay increases and the special retention pay for police officer. Rob and Tia have worked really closely with finance and CAO and NOPD HR on those retention payments. It's complicated, but they make it happen. Okay, and then for our 2024 departmental goals, Tia is going to go over those for our 2024.
Okay, so good afternoon. We continue to work with the City and Civil Service Commission to revise civil service rules and processes to enhance efficiency, transparency, and fairness in the administration of the merit system. So in 2024, we want to oversee a classification and compensation study.
So for the class and comp study, that is one of the increases in our budget this year. What we'd like to do is bring in a vendor to do two things. To look at a handful of targeted positions and compare them to market and see where we are against market. But then also look at our compensation structure and practices in general and our classification structure in general, and give us some suggestions on how to make that whole system easier to use and administer for both us and the departments.
Also oversee the development and administration of police and fire promotional exams. Transition the administration of the current training program to a learning management system.
So right now, our training program's done through paper and an access database. We'll be working with ITI to get into the city's SABA system and have everything electronic so that people can sign up for the employee enrichment courses electronically, which will be much better.
Oversee the administration of the Emerging Leaders Program to add additional cohort. Work with departments to address vacancies through hiring rate increases and or minimum qualification changes. And also oversee the implementation of service-wide pay increases and special retention payments.
So that's that 2.5% across the board for regular employees, and then the 5% for police that the council has put in already. So Rob will be working with finance to get that administered in January. Any questions, council members?
I just have one, and I don't mean to be a trick question, but I just don't know the answer to it. I've loved this goal of work with department to address vacancies. Is it known vacancies or what the department ought to be? And the reason why I ask is, we'll address this when we get to safety and permits, but right now what's being proposed is cutting half of their zoning department. It just does not make sense to me at all. So I'm just kind of wondering what role civil service plays.
So we're triggered by requisitions. So when a department puts in a requisition and it reaches us, that's how we know that the funding has been approved for it. And that's when we work with them to recruit for that position. And then same thing when there's issues filling positions, that's when they reach out to us and ask us to look at hiring rates for the positions to retain.
Mr. Fogg, to make sure I understand, and again, this is all weed stuff, but it's important to us, is the department has to ask for the position, and then the CAO's office or whomever has to approve it. And only at that approval point does civil service get engaged.
Correct.
All right. Anybody else? Councilmember Green? This is your department.
No, but I do want to say, what a great story. 55% increase in applications. That shows that our citizens are interested in potentially joining the city of New Orleans. And I continue to emphasize the public service aspect of it, the also availability of retirement and health benefits. But the biggest thing is just doing a great service for a city that's really moving in the right direction in many respects. But I do want to thank you all because, yes, we would not have on our agenda each council meeting these proposed qualifications, changes, if you will, or increased in salary without you all doing the work behind the scenes to get that done. The studies that people need to recognize that it's not just, okay, we'll just raise the rate because of whatever. It's based on an analysis that is done, and it's based on responsible use of taxpayer funded dollars and time, because any increase is an increase in monies that are paid by taxpayers. So the bottom line is that we're making sure that those jobs are not only filled, but are filled in a way that enhances service to our citizens. So I want to thank you for the work that you do behind the scenes. On the campaign trail, everybody had to bash civil service because that was just part of what you did on the campaign trail. Not all of us. I'm just talking about people who asked us questions. Well, what about this civil service system? These jobs can't get filled because of civil service. These jobs are getting filled. And I want to encourage people to recognize that civil service is working with the city council, working with the administration, and that these jobs are really being filled. The reports that you see today would be much different if you were looking at the reports on FTEs last year. And that's because the positions are being filled and it's making a difference in the city in terms of delivering services. So I just want to again encourage our citizens to apply to the jobs at the city of New Orleans, NOLA.gov/jobs. Those jobs are really being filled. And so for some young people, look at some of those qualifications and you may be in a position to go and get them through an additional education of courses or experience, because those are really important jobs in our city. And I'm just glad to work with you and with the council to see those jobs getting filled. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. Councilmember Morrell.
I'll be brief. I appreciate everything y'all do, even when we disagree. I do believe I'll be attending your next board meeting with Paul Harang, our chief of staff, because we do disagree over a board position, but I enjoy working with you even when we can't reach an agreement, and I'm sure it'll be a fun experience for me because I've never been to a civil service board meeting. It'll be lots of fun.
Councilmember Harris.
I just want to highlight, piggybacking off Councilmember Green, that student loans have resumed, and if you work in public service, you might actually get some student loan forgiveness. So what is it, 10 years of civil service and 10 years of payments, and you can have very high student loans forgiven. So that is an added benefit of working for the city of New Orleans.
Absolutely. On each of our jobs postings, there's a benefits tab, and that's one of the bullets on our benefits tabs is that that city employment makes you eligible for that forgiveness. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not bitter at all about that. Tulane, NYU. Law degrees. All right, thanks.
I just want to say in closing out, Amy, that I do think civil services become a convenient scapegoat inside government, and you all have really reversed that narrative within the last couple of years. So really want to thank you and your entire team. And please go back and tell everybody in your staff, we're seeing all of their hard work, and so as a community, we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, I know this will break everybody's heart, but we have a 2-day hiatus from budget hearings. We come back on Friday with Orleans Parish Communications District, Juvenile Justice Intervention Center, Office of Independent Police Monitor, and the coroner. So we'll stand at ease till then.
Thank you.